Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel and welcome to my Omnibus series. I've got so many of these omnibuses that are going to come out so that you'll be able to listen to an hour's worth of stories, which I know you're going to love. You know, the thing is that telling stories is such a fine art, and it's something that was practiced hundreds of years ago when people didn't have the technology that we have today. And everyone would gather around the fire and listen to a wonderful story. And also, what is so wonderful about a story is that personally, I think it is the best way to go to sleep. Every night when I go to bed, I always listen to stories. And that's something that parents used to do with their children. It's something that they still do with their children. There's nothing better than a good story. And so I hope you're going to enjoy this series. And before we start, I just want to say, do subscribe to my channel because you don't want to miss out on anything. Because I'm in for the long haul and I want to make sure that you get the most stunning stories to go to bed with at night or to listen to when you want to be one of those people sitting beside the fire and listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let's get started. I hope you're going to enjoy the omnibus.
Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, Jackie blamed herself. I mean, who was there else to blame? She knew her husband, Bernie, also laid the blame at her door, although he'd never said as much in so many words. But she had clearly seen the melancholia on his face, and that accusing look in his eyes that had said clandestine words that were never spoken out loud or articulated, but she knew them nevertheless.
How could you have let it happen, Jackie?
She didn't know the answer to that question, because some questions cannot be answered. She had just gone into the house for a couple of minutes. Yes, she'd been waylaid for a little longer than anticipated, but she could never have envisaged something so terrible would happen while she left the patio for just a short amount of time. And this little trip into the house, she had no way of knowing, would serve to cruelly shatter her world into a zillion pieces. She had gone off to her bedroom to get her daughter's armbands that she had purchased the week prior, and would be rather useful as a tool to help her 3-year-old become more acquainted with the water in the pool. She was going to get her daughter in the pool and give her a swimming lesson. Didn't they say you should start teaching your children very young to swim, as young as possible? There was no time like the present as far as Jackie was concerned. Jackie's own mother had put her into the swimming pool when she was only 6 months old. She had bobbed Jackie up and down in her arms in the water, so that from a very early age Jackie had grown to love the swimming pool, and she wanted the same for her little girl. It had been such a beautiful prepossessing day, one of the most magnificent days that Jackie could actually remember, until its beauty was vindictively expunged by the horror that was ultimately to come. This was a day when the weather teased you, like an old friend, reminding you of how wonderful it was to spend time out of doors, enjoying the extravagant generosities that the natural world had to offer, from the prepossessing views to the warm feelings of the sunlight spilling on your face. It was so absolutely perfect. No one could believe such perfection could be obliterated in a single instant. The water in the pool persuasively enticed you to take a dip, which is exactly what Jackie Peterson intended to do, as swimming for her was always a passion, and it was the way she kept her trim body in perfect shape. She had been sitting on the sun lounger, soaking up all the warm sunshine like a salamander, while reading a book and drinking a glass of refreshing homemade iced tea that tasted of peaches. On the patio floor, her 3-year-old daughter Lily had been seated on a comfortable rug, playing with her favourite doll. Her plump little legs were spread out on the floor of the patio, next to her mother's sun lounger, and she was chatting away happily to her doll, as children of her age so often do. The modern patio overlooked the swimming pool, and the water in the reflectant light seemed almost turquoise, glistening in the morning sun. Jackie finally rose to her feet, feeling a sudden, rather impulsive urge to go for a swim. On such a perfect day as this, she should make the most of such enjoyable indulgences, she thought. She gingerly placed the novel she was reading down on the sun lounger, marking the page very carefully with a bookmarker. She then casually slipped into her Diamante-style flip-flops that were lying on the floor next to the sun lounger, where little Lily was playing with her doll. Jackie looked very elegant, in a full leopard print swimming costume that brought out the honey colour of her flawless skin. During the course of her life, she had only ever worn full bathing suits. She absolutely abhorred bikinis. She thought they made you look as if you were wearing your underwear. She trotted down the patio steps and opened the gate to the swimming pool. It creaked as it swung open, which was rather absurd, as the swimming pool fence and the gate had only been recently erected, 12 months before or so, and had recently also been oiled by her husband. The fence had of course been put up to protect their 3-year-old daughter Lily from going into the pool area, because at such a young, tender age, accidents can so easily happen. Jackie would have given her life to ensure that 3-year-old Lily came to no harm. She knew that pool fences had saved many young children's lives in the past, and she had wanted to make sure no harm befell her beloved daughter. She bent over rather cautiously, plunging her fingers into the water to test the temperature. She withdrew her hand and smiled, as the water, like this magnificent day, was absolutely perfect. She was sure that when she walked out of the swimming pool gate to return to the patio, that the gate had spontaneously closed behind her, as it always did, for she was sure she'd heard the click. It had been her dream to live in a beautiful house like this, with a modern, very large swimming pool, in the heart of the Georgian countryside. Jackie had lived in Portland all her life, but after her husband Bernie made a lot of money out of stocks and shares, the couple could afford to upgrade their standard of living and move to the countryside, whereupon they had built their dream home, along with a swimming pool on a sizable plot of land. And what could be better than that? When Jackie's dream to live on a property as idyllic as this had come into fruition, she absolutely believed she was unequivocally the luckiest woman in the entire world to live out her dream, and she knew if it wasn't for her husband Bernie and his savvy aptitude for many of his wise investments, that the dream that she had would never have been realized, for the couple had struggled financially for many years, and Bernie had remained optimistic that his investments would come through for them in the end, and of course they had. Jackie had always been a keen swimmer. Indeed, when she was at school, she had been one of the best swimmers in her year, beating many of the school records, and she was so good and so accomplished she could have easily trained for the Olympics. But Jackie had shunned such a challenge. As much as she adored swimming, she had never been keen of spending countless hours in the swimming pool, working herself to the bone, to achieve those impossible goals. Jackie didn't consider herself to be ambitious, nor was she overly competitive. She didn't want swimming to become a chore for her, but to remain the pleasure it had always been in her life. So most days Jackie would make sure she enjoyed an invigorating swim in the pool. But many of the days the weather had been not as obliging as it was today. Ostensibly for years, it would seem, in order to practice her favourite sport, she had braced the rather unfortunate inconveniences of public indoor swimming pools, which she shared with a host of other people. So she'd never had any privacy during her swimming sessions, but she had enjoyed them nonetheless. Even her own parents had called her a water baby, as she had loved luxuriating in long hot baths, and as a child her mother had struggled to get her out of the bath, for she always wanted to play with her plastic ducks. Jackie's brother, on the other hand, Wayne, had hated bathing, and would be dragged kicking and screaming to have a bath by his mother. But Jackie could have stayed in that bath water forever, if that were at all possible. She had loved going swimming and paddling, and had thoroughly enjoyed water sports of every kind. The first thing Jackie Peterson had decided to do, when she and her husband had bought this piece of land, was to bulldoze the original property and replace it with their dream home. Jackie had judiciously designed the house, with the expert guidance and help of a very skilled avant-garde architect by the name of Philip Macaulay. It was Philip who had warned Jackie to get a swimming pool gate and complimentary fence erected around the newly built pool.
I know a fence around the pool can be quite unsightly, he told her, but you can soften the look by growing pretty vines around it. But you can't be too careful when it comes to young ones. And you do have a little girl. Let's just say a fence around the pool will give you the peace of mind that every parent desperately needs when their young ones are running around. I know of people who couldn't bear the idea of putting up a fence around their swimming pool. They thought it would be an eyesore. And lo and behold, the very worst thing happened. They lost one of their children to a very tragic drowning accident. And as a consequence, never forgave themselves for putting the ugliness of a pool fence over the safety of their own children. With our best intentions, sometimes we'll have our eye off our children for a moment, and that's when accidents can so easily happen. I really wouldn't want that happening to you, Jackie.
Thanks for the advice, Philip, Jackie had said. I know having a pool fence will likely be an eyesore, but I don't care a jot about that. We definitely need a fence around the swimming pool. I couldn't imagine anything worse than losing little Lily. The very idea is too horrendous to even entertain. I'll grow climbing roses around the pool fence to make it look as attractive as possible. And that is exactly what Jackie had done, so that the pool fence was a tumble of pretty roses, and didn't look even half as bad as Jackie thought it would, as roses can easily turn the most ugly eyesore into an object of great beauty. On this sunny afternoon, Jackie needed to go indoors, just for a brief minute, but it only takes a minute to destroy your entire life. A minute when your attention is cruelly diverted, when your eyes are turned away. And it takes that pivotal second when, unbeknown to you, a tragedy can take place under your very watch that you knew nothing about, until, of course, it's all too late. After testing the temperature of the pool water, Jackie Lee happily sashayed over to the patio, where Lily was playing with her doll on the rug, and seemed fully engaged. Jackie bent down to lift up her 3-year-old daughter into her arms, shaking her slightly, in a teasing manner. Her heart melted with warmth, as Lily's blue eyes stared into hers adoringly. Little did Jackie Peterson know that this would be the last loving embrace that she would ever have with her little girl. Lily was the cutest little 3-year-old girl that Jackie had ever seen, but of course every mother is inclined to be biased in that regard when it comes to their own children. But Lily was an adorable 3-year-old. She had the face of a cherub, those chubby cheeks that you love to pinch because they're so adorable, ringleted blonde curls that tumbled around her heart-shaped face, and she had eyes that were so blue. They reminded Jackie of cornflowers. When she walked, she waddled like a duck, which was really endearing, as she was still struggling a little with her gait. Lily began to chuckle with delight as she looked up at her mother adoringly. She was the kind of child that would never stop smiling. She was always in a happy, contented mood, and had never given Jackie any trouble. "You and I are going to have lots of fun today," Jackie told her daughter. "Mammy is going to teach you how to swim. Of course, I'm going to hold you up in the water, but that's where the first lessons start, you know. How about that? Won't that be nice? I was put in the water by my mother when I was 6 months old." Whether Lily understood what Jackie was saying, she wasn't sure. But she did smile up at Jackie, and she held her doll in her hands, clinging on to it like a hot water bottle. "Katie," she said, pointing at her doll. Katie likes the water." "Katie's not going to swim today," said Jackie, smiling warmly. "But you are, Lily. Isn't that exciting?" "Swim," said Lily, looking at her mother again. "That's right, Lily. You're going to have a swim. I'm going to get some armbands for you, and I'll prop you up in the water." "Swim," said Lily again, pointing to the water. "I'm going to make sure you have a swim," said Jackie, putting her daughter down on the patio floor. "Now you keep playing with Katie. I won't be 2 minutes. I'm going indoors for a brief second. You stay right where you are and be a good girl." As Jackie slipped through the sliding doors from the patio into the house, she briefly looked into the kitchen to see Kirsty hard at work, cleaning the granite surfaces of her avant-garde, perfectly designed kitchen. which would likely have impressed the likes of Gordon Ramsay, as it had a cutting-edge design and all the kitchen accessories you could ever need, along with the most superb bright red Aga that had been imported all the way from England. And Jackie had always dreamed of owning an Aga, as it warmed up the entire house, and especially the kitchen, in the cold months of the year, as it was permanently left on, and this was an oil-fired Aga. Jackie briefly glanced into the kitchen to look in on 16-year-old Kirsty. She noticed the teenager was wearing those Bluetooth earphones on her ears, and was clearly listening to something on her cell phone that she liked very much, for she was bopping away very happily to the music as she worked, obliviously unaware that Jackie was watching her dance. Kirsty had been working for the Petersons every afternoon after school for a couple of hours or so to earn a little extra money, and to help Jackie around the house where she could. Sometimes she even did a little babysitting for the Petersons, for she was very fond of their 3-year-old daughter Lily, and little Lily had rarely warmed to the 16-year-old. "Kirsty!" Jackie called out, waving her hand wildly in the air to get Kirsty's attention. Kirsty must have sensed Jackie's presence, because she suddenly looked up in Jackie's direction and apologetically removed her earphones from her ear and looked up at Jackie. "Yes, Mrs. Peterson?" she asked, standing to attention. "I just want you to know I'm going to the bedroom very quickly to look for some armbands for little Lily, and a towel, of course. Keep an eye on her, will you? She's on the patio right now, on the rug, playing with her doll Katie. I don't want her wandering off, as you know how curiously inquisitive she can be. I'm terrified of her going off into the woods." The kitchen overlooked the patio and the swimming pool, and Jackie wanted to make sure that Kirsty was watching over her daughter. But the 16-year-old girl, although obliging, appeared suddenly distracted, when her cell phone suddenly rang. "Oh, my God!" she cried out in delight, as she glanced down at the caller ID. "It's Ryan, Jackie!" She looked up at Jackie, her face lighting up like a Christmas tree. Ryan was the new boy she'd been dating recently, whom she told Jackie was absolutely the one. "I'm going to spend my entire life with him, Jackie," she had told Jackie proudly, with an assertive determination that suggested there was no doubt in her mind about this. "I knew when I laid eyes on him for the first time that he was the boy for me. I'm going to marry him one day. I know he feels the same way about me." Jackie had laughed it off, for 16-year-old kids were notorious for being extremely immature, and they certainly didn't know what they wanted from life at such a young age, let alone who they would one day marry. Jackie stood there in the doorway of the kitchen, watching Kirsty take her call, and Jackie could tell Kirsty was smitten by this young man who called himself Ryan. But at 16 years old, she doubted the relationship would last even 10 minutes, if her teenage years were anything to go by, that is. Once the infatuation had invariably worn off, as it so often does with girls of Kirsty's age, she'd likely be swooning over another boy very soon. Kirsty looked at Jackie and nodded at her, as she walked over to the kitchen window. She waved at Jackie as if to say, "I've got this." Jackie discerned by Kirsty's body language that Kirsty was going to keep an eye on little Lily, so she could go off and get those armbands for her daughter and a towel to dry off with after the swim. Jackie wasn't overly concerned about little Lily's safety, as the pool gate was closed, but she was more worried about her daughter wandering off into the woods, which fringed the edge of their large lawn and stretched back over a sizable distance. Jackie had often seen Lily gazing off longingly towards the woods, with an unquenchable childlike intrigue and curiosity. Sometimes she'd wave ebulliently at the trees, giggling with delight, and Jackie would ask her what was funny, and who she was waving at, and her daughter would once again chuckle and say, "The bear! The bear is waving at me!" Jackie hadn't seen any bears on the property, although in this more mountainous part of Georgia, bears weren't uncommon. Little Lily had a penchant for bears, and had dozens of fluffy bears all over her bedroom, distributed over bookshelves and everywhere else besides, all whom had their own special names. So Jackie was certain that little Lily would grow up to become a big animal lover one day, much like her father Bernie was. The family had 2 bulldogs, Sammy and Poppy, who were currently lying on the patio next to Lily. while the family cat, Tiger, was lying stretched out on the sun lounger, lapping up the sunshine very happily. He always occupied Bernie's sun lounger when the man wasn't around. Jackie dashed off to her bedroom to look for the armbands. She had quite the battle trying to find them, as she didn't remember where she'd put them. Where the hell were they, she thought. She searched through her wardrobe and had very little luck in finding the plastic bag containing the armbands she had recently purchased that had been especially designed for 3-year-olds. Where the hell were they? Finally she sighed with relief. She found them tucked away in her underwear drawer, and as to why they were there, she couldn't be sure. But all that mattered was at least she'd found them, and now she'd hold her 3-year-old up in the water and help her child learn to kick her back legs for the very first time. She smiled to herself contentedly. Life was very good. How happy she was that they had moved to the countryside. This was the best place to raise a young child, and a whole world away from her claustrophobic life in Portland, which had made her sometimes feel like she was living in a goldfish bowl. For everywhere you went there were people, and more people, like schools of fish that you could never avoid. And Jackie had always fancied the quiet life. She enjoyed socializing from time to time, but she also valued her space and independence. And out here she certainly got to enjoy that kind of freedom, a freedom she'd never appreciated before. She also enjoyed her regular shops in the small town, where the locals had warmed to her, gladly welcoming her to the community. She was so grateful her husband Bernie had been such a savvy investor, as they could still be counting their pennies now and struggling to pay their rent on time. But their fortunes had changed dramatically after the last couple of years, so the future looked very promising for them all. Jackie would now be able to give Lily the things she had never enjoyed as a child growing up, as her parents had struggled relentlessly to give her and her brother Wayne the things they badly needed. So much of their clothing was purchased from jumble sales and thrift stores, and growing up they'd lived on a diet of bread and jam and milk. So no one was more appreciative, in her change of fortune, than Jackie was. The Petersons had desperately wanted to have a child, but for some reason it had taken a long time for Jackie to actually fall pregnant. So when she finally did, the couple really did feel as if they'd hit the jackpot. So Lily became the Petersons' pride and joy, a gift from God, you could say. Well, that is what Jackie described her as, for she'd spent many a lonely night in her bed, before she fell pregnant, negotiating with God to have a baby, much like Hannah had done in the Bible, when she realized she was all but barren. Then it had happened just like it had happened for Hannah, and Jackie had fallen pregnant, and as a consequence she had never felt happier. She had loved her role as a stay-at-home mother. She felt absolutely no envy towards ambitious women who wanted to focus on their careers, for Jackie felt she didn't want to miss out on a moment of Lily's childhood. Jackie hurriedly grabbed a soft, fluffy swimming towel from the airing cupboard on her return journey back to the patio, where her daughter awaited her. She trotted down the passageway, glancing in on the kitchen briefly. She was annoyed to see that Kirsty was not looking out of the kitchen window to keep an eye on her daughter. On the contrary, Kirsty was walking up and down the kitchen, talking excitedly to her boyfriend Ryan, seemingly forgetting her duty of responsibility in looking out for little Lily. Jackie could hear Kirsty's conversation. "That's right! It does the best ice creams! We've got to go there together, Ryan. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. I spoke to the owner myself last week. He makes his own ice creams, you know. Can you believe that? He's invented so many incredible flavours. The guy's an absolute genius, let me tell you. He said if we've got any innovative ideas for new flavours, we've got to let him know about it. And if the flavour sells well, we can get to enjoy free ice creams the entire summer. Isn't that cool?" I know. No, I'm sorry. You can't like strawberry ice cream. That's a woman's choice. You should be liking peanut butter or pistachio. Those are much more masculine flavours. Yes, they are. Jackie was tempted to say something to Kirsty and give her a telling off for being so insouciant, but life was too short for that, Besides, it was such a prepossessingly beautiful day, and she didn't want to stain it with any unpleasantness by being snappy with a 16-year-old girl who was smitten by her new boyfriend. Jackie had been 16 once, and reminded herself how excited she had been when she started dating a new boy, so she didn't want to be too hard on Kirsty. By all accounts, Jackie was pretty sure she'd find Lily exactly where she left her, sitting there on the rug with the bulldogs at her side, playing very happily with her doll Katie. When Jackie casually strolled onto the porch, she looked towards where Lily should be playing with her doll, but the doll had been abandoned and was lying across the rug, while Lily was nowhere to be seen. Her 2 bulldogs were no longer sitting on the patio, but were standing over the swimming pool water, looking down on it, and barking almost manically. Jackie looked in their direction. She then saw something at the bottom of the pool, and she knew instinctively it was her daughter Lily. Jackie let out an ear-piercing scream that was so loud that Kirsty suddenly came charging out of the house, her eyes wide with horror. "What's happened? What's happened?" she cried out, looking out to see Jackie diving into the pool to retrieve her daughter's limp, unresponsive body that lay at the very bottom. Even before Jackie recovered her little girl, she knew her little girl was deceased. When the emergency services had arrived on the scene, they had done everything in their power to try and revive little Lily, who looked like a perfect porcelain doll lying on the side of the swimming pool. But everyone knew that the child was dead, and for a while no one said a word, as everyone hung their heads in sorrow. Once the EMTs had given up and had stopped working on little Lily's chest, Jackie took over. She was on top of her daughter, trying desperately to revive her with CPR, until the EMT gently pulled her away from her daughter and told her that it was all too late.
"I'm very sorry, ma'am," he said. "I'm very, very sorry. Your daughter's gone. It's too late. She hasn't got a pulse or a heartbeat."
"No!" Jackie had screamed out. "No, she's not dead! Do something! She can't be dead!" Tears streamed down Jackie's face. "Do something! Don't just stand there!"
"Ma'am, please will you calm yourself down?" the EMT said to her very gently. "I'm afraid we've done all we can possibly do. We tried to revive your little girl, but there's nothing we can do. She's gone. We're very, very sorry." Jackie had stared vacuously into space. Her face had become so white, her body shivering on this very warm summer's day. It was impossible to believe she could be cold on a summer's morning like this. But shock can make your temperature plummet dramatically, and someone, sensing this, had put a light blanket over Jackie because she was shivering so much. 2 police officers had arrived on the scene, as it was always important for them to investigate a death to ensure it wasn't suspicious. It was a female police officer that questioned Jackie. "What happened, ma'am?" she asked. "Oh, I don't know. Everything happened so quickly. I went inside to look for some armbands. I'd bought some armbands especially for a 3-year-old girl," Jackie told the police officer. "I thought the swimming pool gate was closed. I really did. Earlier on, I went to check the temperature of the water in the pool, and it was absolutely perfect, so I knew we could go swimming. I had no idea that the pool door had not closed behind me. I asked 16-year-old Kirsty over here to watch over little Lily, while I went indoors to get the armbands and a towel. Kirsty promised me she'd watch my daughter for me, because I was worried that Lily would go wandering off into the woods. But I didn't even know for a second the pool imposed a threat, because I didn't know that the gate had been left open. I was sure I'd heard it click behind me. Oh, my God! I can't believe I was this stupid. What's wrong with me? Why didn't I notice the pool gate was open? I didn't even realize it. This is all my fault. Why wasn't I more careful?" "Look, Mrs. Peterson," Jackie was told by the kind police officer, "you mustn't blame yourself for what has happened. It's devastating to lose a child. There is nothing worse, and I'm sincerely sorry for your loss.
But don't blame yourself for this. Accidents do happen. I've seen it before, and it's nobody's fault."
"No, they don't!" Jackie had cried out indignantly. "If I'd been more responsible as a mother, if I had double-checked that pool gate was closed, this accident would never have happened. And if Kirsty had done what I asked her to do, and watched my daughter from the kitchen window, instead of blabbing away to her boyfriend on the telephone, none of this would have happened."
Kirsty had been standing there, shaking like a leaf, tears streaming down her cheeks.
"She's right,"
she told the policewoman, hanging her head in shame.
"I promised Jackie that I would watch over Lily for her from the kitchen window. I got sidetracked. I got distracted. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry, Jackie. I'm so sorry."
"You need to stop playing the blame game here," said the kind police officer. "You can't point fingers at each other. It doesn't change the fact that Lily has gone." The police officer had gone into the kitchen and boiled a kettle. She had given both women warm cups of tea to calm down their nerves, because it would seem both Kirsty and Jackie were in quite the state. It was as if they were disconnected with what was going on, and Jackie was to say later that parts of that dreadful day had become like an ambiguous blur to her, as shock can so easily delete many of those memories, especially when they relate to a traumatic event. A while later, Jackie's husband Bernie had arrived on the scene. His face was devoid of all colour. His eyes looked like two blue marbles. When he saw his deceased daughter being placed on a gurney, with a sheet covering her body, he let out the kind of scream that still haunted Jackie's darkest nightmares to this very day. She'd never forget Bernie's scream, for he'd sounded more like an animal being attacked than a human being.
"What did you do?" Bernie had screamed at Jackie. "You killed our little girl! You've killed our Lily! Why weren't you watching her, Jackie?"
Jackie began to howl, and then Bernie had taken her lovingly into his arms and rocked her like a baby.
"I'm sorry, love, to blame you. This isn't your fault. It was a dreadful, dreadful accident."
If Jackie was given $1 for every time someone had told her that it was just a dreadful, dreadful accident, she'd be exceedingly wealthy by now. But Jackie felt that this was an accident that could easily have been avoided, if only she had been more vigilant as a mother. After the unfortunate tragedy, a question that Jackie asked herself over and over again, probably 1,000 times a day, was how had the pool gate been left open? She was certain she had closed it behind herself, but you could hark back to that day 1,000 times over, and it didn't change the fact that her very beautiful 3-year-old girl Lily would never be coming back, and one way or another it was all her fault. You could sugarcoat the truth as much as you liked, but the reality was brutal. Jackie knew she could never forgive herself for the tragic accident. Bernie had been supportive over the devastating loss of their daughter, but she did know underneath the complex layers of the calm, very composed veneer he presented to the world that her husband was not only devastated, but angry that Jackie had been so irresponsible by leaving the gate open. And that 16-year-old Kirsty, who had got carried away with a call from her boyfriend, had not realized the gravity of her distraction, and how it had almost certainly cost a little 3-year-old girl her life. Of course, Kirsty was devastated about Lily's death. Her eyes were red and puffy, as she apologized profusely to Jackie for what had happened.
"I'm so sorry, Mrs. Peterson. I don't know what to say. You're absolutely right about everything. This is my fault. I should have been watching over little Lily. You asked me to do that, and I failed you." "Yes, you should have,"
Jackie had growled at her, her eyes filled with unbridled rage. For a moment she'd quite happily have strangled Kirsty. If she hadn't been on her call to her stupid boyfriend, Lily would very much still be alive.
"I asked you to do this one thing for me, Kirsty, this one thing. Just watch over my little girl for a few minutes while I went looking for those armbands. I asked you specifically to watch over her," she said accusingly.
the bitterness in her voice very discernible.
But you, no, you were more interested in speaking to your boyfriend, Ryan. I hope you're happy now, because our little girl is dead because of you. She was only 3, Kirsty. How could you be so irresponsible? I know I should have closed the door behind me of the swimming pool. But you also have a responsibility here because I specifically asked you to watch over her.
I know, Mrs. Peterson.
I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do. There's nothing you can do, Kirsty. Nothing. My husband will pay you your wages. And I never want you to come back to this house ever again. Do you understand? I can't trust you in my home any more. You've ruined our lives. I hope you're proud of yourself.
Kirsty had nodded her head in submission and walked away very sadly. And as far as Jackie was concerned, she hoped she'd never lay eyes on Kirsty ever again. It was the day after Lily's death that Jackie had casually walked over to the swimming pool to stare out at the scene again. That was when she found a collection of stones piled up together in a very curious way, and in the centre of this bizarre arrangement was a single pink flower. She wondered if possibly one of the EMTs had done this, by way of saying farewell to her daughter, but she hadn't seen anybody arranging stones around the pool like this. But it was a sweet gesture, she had thought, thinking little of it, as people did have their bizarre ways of expressing grief. For the next 2 weeks her house had been filled with flower arrangements sent by well-wishers, and many locals living in the town that had learnt the tragic news, all expressing their extreme sorrow to Jackie over her daughter's tragic passing. But no acts of kindness would ever take the dreadful hurt away for her. Jackie Peterson was absolutely devastated by Lily's tragic fortuitous passing, so much so that the beautiful house that she and her husband had built themselves in the Georgian countryside appeared to have lost its gloss. And now Jackie hated that swimming pool where Lily had died so very much that she was determined to get it filled in. But then there was another part of her that couldn't do it, for that swimming pool was where her daughter had breathed her very last, and filling it in might blur the memories of her precious little girl. There were many times Jackie willed herself to die, for many a mother in Jackie's position can easily relate to those hopelessly despair-driven feelings, as the pain of losing a child is unbearable. And Jackie had withdrawn into her shell, so much so that it was impacting her marriage to Bernie, who stood back helplessly, watching his wife wither away in front of his very eyes, like a dying wild flower in the meadow. No wonder they say that after you lose a child in devastating circumstances, the parents of that child very often split up, as if the unbearable pain has torn them both apart. Bernie Peterson didn't want to see that happen to his marriage, as his wife Jackie was his entire world, and without her he knew he'd be lost. He was well aware, of course, of how fragile their marriage had become after Lily's death, but he loved Jackie more than life itself. And yes, there was a small clandestine part of himself that secretly blamed his wife for getting a 16-year-old girl to watch over Lily, even for a few minutes, as surely Jackie knew how easily distracted 16-year-old kids could easily become, with their hormones running rampant all over the place. Bernie reminded himself that accidents invariably happened. People died in burning buildings when someone left the oil on the gas hob by mistake. People were killed in car accidents, in head-on collisions, when drivers weren't paying due attention. Sometimes they were distracted by a call on their cell phone, which drew their attention away from the road. People sometimes died from all kinds of allergic reactions, or from taking the wrong kind of medication. Life was like a rather tumultuous tightrope, and it was easy to lose your balance, especially if you weren't paying attention. There were so many things in life that made people fall off the edge, as sadly all human beings are mortal, and life can be extremely short. Bernie had tried to tell his wife this again and again, on 100 different occasions, to soothe her dreadful guilt that appeared to be eating her up alive from the inside out. "Look, love," he had said to her very tenderly, "even if it meant we had to lose our Lily all over again,
I'm very, very glad she came into our lives. She was a God-given gift to us, and I wouldn't have missed those beautiful 3 years for all the world. And if it makes you feel any better, I don't believe it's the end for Lily. I'm quite sure one day when we pass away ourselves, we will be reunited with our girl again."
"What do you mean?" Jackie had said, choking back the tears.
"I mean our little girl is growing up on the other side, and one day when we pass away, we will be reunited with her again. That's exactly what I was trying to say."
"But are you sure?" Jackie had asked him. "Are you sure Lily's spirit is still alive, and it lives on? I want to believe it, Bernie, I really do. But after everything that has happened, even my faith in God has dissipated. How could a loving God ever allow this to happen to us? That's what I ask myself again and again."
"I'm sure that our little girl's spirit is very much alive," said Bernie. "I know it's easy for us to blame God for what happened to Lily, but that would be a futile thing to do. One thing I'm sure about, love, is you can't go on like this anymore. You're living like someone with a terminal disease. It's like you're wasting away before my very eyes. You never eat anything these days. You cry all the time. You're drowning yourself in your sorrows. I don't want to lose my beautiful, precious wife. I mean, what would I be without you? A shadow of my former self. We've lost our little girl, and that has broken our hearts. Of course it has. What has happened is very, very tragic. No one can dispute that for a second. But it was an accident, love, and I need you to remember that. I don't want to lose you as well. It might be better, love, if we went back to Portland and sold this house. You probably don't want to live here any more after Lily's accident. And looking on that pool every day must be doing a number on you. I can understand how you feel. You only have to say the word, and I will put the place on the market at once."
"I don't want to sell this beautiful house of ours," said Jackie. "I hate it, but I love it at the very same time. I hate it because Lily died here, in that swimming pool. But I love this house because it also reminds me of her. I have my memories of her here. If we were to move away, then I would feel we were moving away from our little girl. Sometimes I feel as if she's still around here, running around on the lawn. If we moved away, I don't think I'd feel her presence anymore, and that would make me feel significantly worse than I do now."
"I understand that, love. We can stay if you like. This is a beautiful home. But you do need to get your act together. It's been a year now, and I know it's very hard on you, but we've got to move on with our lives. We can always try again for another child. I know it's not what you want me to say, but it was a long road for you to get pregnant in the first place with Lily. God willing, I don't see why it can't happen again."
"But I don't want another child, Bernie. Don't you get that? I want Lily back. That's what I've always wanted, what I've only wanted. I loved her. She was everything to me, Bernie." Jackie burst into tears, sobbing into her husband's shirt until it became soaked. "I only want Lily."
"I know, love,"
said Bernie tenderly, drawing his wife into his loving embrace and patting her on the back to soothe away her angst.
"Of course you want Lily back. That's perfectly understandable, and so do I. I couldn't think of anything I'd like more. I'd give anything up in order to have her back, and so would you. But we need to be realistic, love, because it's not going to happen. Our daughter is gone. You need to accept that. She's not coming back, but her indelible memories will remain alive in us. We will never forget our precious little girl."
Bernie was at the end of his tether, for Jackie refused any grief counselling. She was permanently withdrawn these days, so the only thing Bernie could do was to pray for a miracle and hope that something would invariably happen to bring normality back to their lives. Their lives had been cruelly ripped apart at the seams, rather like a garment with a hole in it that can never be repaired, as the rip only appears to get progressively worse every time you try to put a band-aid on it. Bernie opened his wallet and handed his wife a card. "What is this?" Jackie had asked, taking the card from her husband and inspecting it closely. "Who is Merrill Franchester? I've never heard of her before. What an unusual name." "She's a psychic medium," said Bernie rather gingerly, wondering if Jackie was about to fly off the handle, like she'd done when he suggested she went for counselling. "I'm told she's very good. I'm not a believer in psychic mediums, but you could go and see her if you like. I was given that card by the butcher in town, would you believe?" "The butcher gave you a card for a psychic medium?" asked Jackie, looking somewhat bemused. "But why would he do that?" Bernie seemed to look rather bashful. He brushed a finger rather awkwardly over his moustache, something he always did when he felt a tad apprehensive. "Well, the other day I popped into the butchery in town to buy some ribeye steaks from him, because since you've been, well, caught up in your grief, as you know, I've done all the shopping and cooking around here." "Are you getting at me about that? Is that what this is about, Bernie?" "Of course I'm not getting at you, Jackie. I'm quite happy to do all the shopping and cooking for you, as long as you like. It's no skin off my nose. And I'm happy to help wherever I can." "Well, I'm glad to hear it, Bernie. For a moment I thought you were, well, complaining about me, being caught up in my grief." "Of course I'm not complaining. The butcher was asking after you, which I thought was very good of him. He doesn't even know you that well, even though you've been buying meat from him for over the last year. He told me you rarely like his marinated pork chops, and that you were always buying them from him, so he gave me a dozen as a gift to you. Isn't that very thoughtful of him?" "So everybody knows our business, is that right, Bernie?" said Jackie, looking mortified. "Even the butcher knows about the drowning of little Lily." "Don't look like that, Jackie. People in this small, very friendly community care, don't they? It's not like in Portland, where our neighbours didn't even really know us at all. In a small town like this, people talk, don't they? Word gets around fast. Everyone was extremely devastated to hear that we lost Lily in a swimming pool accident, but no one blames you in the slightest. People know it was a tragic accident. A lot of people have been asking after you, Jackie, because you've been avoiding going into town for a year now. People are concerned that they haven't seen your friendly face around the place. Many people have asked if there's anything they can do, Jackie, to lift you out of your melancholia. And the butcher was ever so nice. He remembers a year ago you used to visit him every Tuesday and Thursday. Imagining remembering details like that. It was very generous of him to give us some of his best pork chops, don't you think? I was touched by his kindness." "It is very kind of him. And I'm touched as well. But even so, it's none of his business, nor is it the folk in town's business, to go prying in our affairs. Why do people have to interfere like this? Put their noses into our business? Why do they have to be so damn nosy, Bernie? Are their lives so desperately mundane, so boringly miserable, that they get their kicks out of gossiping over other people's lives? I assume the butcher gave you this card on my account, but I'm not interested. I don't know why I'd ever want to go to a psychic anyway. Aren't they supposed to all be charlatans?" "Maybe they are," said Bernie, shrugging his shoulders nonchalantly. "I'm clueless. I don't know anything about psychic mediums at all. Never been to one myself. But the butcher recommends you go. He says you've got nothing to lose, and the experience might lift your spirits. Believe it or not, the butcher's name is Otto Frankfurt, which is quite funny, don't you think? Because frankfurters are German sausages," he said, trying to be humorous. "There's nothing funny about that, Bernie," said Jackie sharply. "Nothing amusing about his surname at all." "Well, even so, he's a very nice man. And like many people in town, Otter is concerned about you, Jackie. He told me his sister Paula lost her 4-year-old boy about 10 years ago. His name was Tommy, I believe. He ran into the middle of the road, and a passing motorist failed to see him and ran him down. Paula knew nothing about it until the police arrived at her front door to tell her that the child that she thought was in his bedroom, playing happily, was actually dead. Paula lives in New York,
on a busy street, I'm told, where a lot of cars go flying by. And they still don't know how Tommy got out of the house, or what he was doing in the road in the first place. Anyway, Otter said when Paula came to Georgia to stay with him for a few weeks, she was inconsolable with grief, as you can imagine. She refused to go out, withdrew from the world completely. I gather, rather like you, she blamed herself for not keeping a watch on her son, and still to this day she's at a loss as to how Tommy got out of the house. But she thinks she might have left the kitchen door open for a brief moment when she put the bins out for the weekly collection. That might be when her son went walkabout. Apparently he had this habit of wandering off at times, like kids so often do, and even got lost in a supermarket once. Accidents happen, to the best of us it would seem.
Accidents can be avoided, Bernie, said Jackie stiffly, if people paid more attention to their children. Like if I'd been paying more attention to little Lily, and not trusted a 16-year-old teenager to watch over our girl. She would still be with us. I blame myself for her untimely death. I really do.
Don't keep going there, love. Don't keep punishing yourself like this. It isn't helping anyone. The only person you're destroying is yourself. And you're destroying us. Anyway, let me get back to my story. It might make you reconsider visiting the psychic medium. I believe she's very good.
You've just said she's very good, Bernie, but I'm not interested.
Hear me out, love. I haven't finished telling you Otter's story yet. Otter heard about the psychic medium, and he told Paula to go and see the woman. Anyway, he wasn't a believer in psychics any more than I am, and was extremely doubtful that a visit with the medium would help his sister. But let's just say he'd have moved heaven and earth to get his sister back. She was wandering around the place like a lost, defeated soul in limbo, that had no purpose in life anymore. Even her relationship with her husband had become fractured. She'd been for grief counselling, got medication from her doctor, but nothing appeared to be working for her. Otter believed his sister was slipping away from him, like I feel with you sometimes, as after losing little Tommy, she had lost her desire to live. In the end, after much persuasion, Otter's sister decided she had nothing to lose in seeing the psychic medium, and she reckons it was the best thing she did, as it made her come to terms with Tommy's tragic passing.
Well, good for her. I'm glad it worked out for her, but I very much doubt going to a psychic medium would work for me. I do understand how she felt, though, because I've lost my will to live as well. Do you know how hard it is for me to get up in the morning, Bernie? Do you have any idea? Sometimes it's so painful, just getting out of bed. I feel so hopelessly lost, as if I'm caught up in a big fog, and I can't see my way through it.
I understand that, love, completely. I feel exactly the same way as you do. But I have to go to work every day, and I try my level best not to allow my emotions to drag me down, because I know it's not going to do me any earthly good. And I wish you would do the same. Losing Lily is the hardest thing that has happened in our lives, but we do have to move past this, love, or we will self-destruct. I'm at the point that Otter reached with his sister, where I would do absolutely anything in my power to help you, love. I know you didn't want to go to that counsellor, but a medium might help you connect with little Lily. How about it, love? It might give you some closure, perhaps.
I know you mean well, Bernie, and I appreciate your efforts to help me. But I very much doubt a psychic medium could help me connect with little Lily, said Jackie, shaking her head furiously. I doubt that very much. That psychic medium probably makes it all up as she goes along. She probably preys on people's grief like a predator, making them believe they've connected with a lost loved one, when nothing could be further from the truth. It's all a duplicitous Machiavellian scan, so she can make lots of money out of grieving people, like myself. What did Otter's sister have to say about this medium? Let's hear it. I bet she filled her head with utter drivel.
Well, I understand this particular medium does not ask for money. She thinks that's the wrong thing to do. But she does appreciate a donation if you're willing to give it to her. Anyway, when it comes to Paula, she was keen to go to the medium in the end, But like you, she remained sceptical. I guess in a way she wanted to believe that little Tommy was still very much around on the other side. So that's why she agreed to go to the medium. Otter told me when Paula returned from her visit with the medium, she was like a completely different person, as if a whole weight had been lifted off her shoulders. He said he hadn't seen Paula smiling for a long time. That was 10 years ago, you know. She returned to his house with such a broad grin on her face, and he said after that, from thenceforth, she was able to pick up the pieces of her life. She went on to have 4 other children. Of course, she misses Tommy very much, but she got so much reassurance from the psychic medium. She was told that her son was doing very well on the other side, and was being looked after by her late grandfather. That gave her so much peace. She said the psychic told her things that the psychic couldn't possibly have known, like the name of Tommy's toy soldier, and the name for the pet rabbit they'd adopted. I know going to a medium is against our religious beliefs, but right now I would do anything to help you, love. Why not at least go and see this woman? If she can help you, then I think the woman is doing some good in this world, even if it does go against a religious doctrine. Otter gives the medium all the credit for bringing her sister out of the fog that you find yourself in now.
Well, if you think it will help, I will go and see the medium, Jackie said, looking somewhat uncertain, but her demeanour appeared to have softened significantly. Bernie could see a hopeful glint in his wife's eyes, as if she thought the medium might be her last hope to finally see her way ahead.
Look, love, I don't want you to get your hopes up. I really don't, only for them to be cruelly crushed. I've never really had much time for mediums and psychics. But let's just say if Otter's sister Paula was transformed by her visit, there's no reason why you shouldn't be too. I mean, what is the worst that could happen? You could probably return home claiming you are still in the fog of your melancholia, or you could return home feeling as if the fog was lifting, and that, in my opinion, is a game changer. I, for one, would like to get the Jackie I love so very much back, and I know she's in there somewhere, so I will do anything I can to help you, even if it means going down some rather unconventional, unorthodox route such as this. How bad can visiting a medium really be, if it brings you peace of mind?
I've just told you, Bernie. There's no need to persuade me any more. I told you I'm going to see this woman. If it helped Paula so much, I would be a fool not to go and see the woman. Because you're right, I can't go on like this.
Good, I'm glad you're seeing sense. We'll make an appointment for you, love.
Jackie was not convinced that going to a psychic medium would be of any help to her. But one thing was certain, she really wanted to believe that her daughter Lily was still very much around. If she could possibly make contact with her daughter through this medium, then maybe some of the heaviness of her guilt and the sense of profound loss she felt might finally lift. Jackie was doubtful that she would experience the same sense of relief that Otter's sister Paula had experienced on her visit to the medium. But it was well worth exploring these uncharted waters, even if it was against her religious convictions. Jackie had decided to go to the psychic medium alone, even though Bernie had offered to accompany her, but she felt that she needed to do this alone. Bernie drove her to the small little cottage on the edge of town.
Good luck, love,
he said, giving his wife a brief kiss on the cheek. But Jackie remained resolutely seated in the passenger side seat next to her husband, and didn't appear to be in a hurry to get out of the car. "I don't know if I can do this, Bernie," she said, staring out of the passenger side window at the twee little whitewashed cottage. "I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing, going to see a psychic."
Look, love, why don't you at the very least give it a shot? Said Bernie, encouragingly patting his wife on the knee. If you don't want to do it for yourself, then do it for me.
Very well. Wish me luck.
I don't think you're going to need it, love. I'm quite sure everything's going to be absolutely fine.
Jackie reluctantly climbed out of the car, closing the door behind her.
Remember, love, I'm waiting for you in the car,
Bernie called after her. Jackie gingerly opened the little white wicker gate. She trotted down the cobbled path that led to the wraparound porch, that generously hugged the front side of the whitewashed cottage. It was an old cottage, but there was something so charming about it. Some wind chimes attached to the branches of a small tree close to the cottage were swinging furiously in the cool breeze, letting out a beautiful musical trill. As Jackie stepped out onto the porch, she observed 4 Adirondack chairs surrounding a very large walnut table. The table was covered in a selection of bird books. There were so many of them, along with a pair of binoculars. So Merrill Franchester, the psychic medium, was obviously a very keen bird watcher. So she was human after all, which was a very good sign. On the porch there was an upholstered double-seater swing chair, where a marmalade cat was lying fast asleep, curled up in a ball. The cat suddenly looked up. When he heard Jackie's approach, his yellow eyes appeared to fix on her curiously. The cat was rather beautiful, reminding Jackie of a cat her parents had once owned when she was growing up as a girl.
"Oh, you are so lovely, aren't you lovely?"
said Jackie, moving over to the cat and rubbing his extended belly, which was rather on the tubby side. The cat began to purr.
"Oh, my dear, you've made Ginger a very happy cat. I think he's rather taken to you. You've got him in his soft spot. He absolutely adores having his tummy scratched," came a woman's voice, and Jackie turned around to look at the lady standing outside the screen door. "You must be Jackie Peterson," said the woman, smiling warmly at Jackie and extending her rather weathered, veiny hand. "I've been expecting you. You're right on time, which I really appreciate."
Jackie shook the medium's hand, and the woman smiled at Jackie through cornflower blue eyes that were startlingly exactly the same colour as little Lily's eyes had been when she was alive.
"I'm Merrill Franchester," said the woman. "I'm very delighted you've come. Can I call you Jackie, or would you prefer me to call you Mrs. Peterson?"
"Jackie will be fine," said Jackie.
"Please come in, will you, Jackie?"
she said, beckoning for Jackie to follow her through the screen door, which she did. The cottage was sumptuously cosy and warmly welcoming. The furnishings were really beautiful, and everything was spick and span, without a speck of dust anywhere. Merrill was not what Jackie would have envisaged a psychic medium to be like. In her mind's eye she had believed the woman would look like a gypsy, who lived in a run-down shack of a trailer home, where everything would smell of mildew and of damp, and the woman would wear a crocheted shawl over her head and hundreds of bracelets on her wrists. But Merrill was not like a gypsy. She was a typical all-American housewife. Jackie guessed she was in her late 60s, or possibly even early 70s. She had very white hair that was cut in an avant-garde pixie hairstyle that accentuated her small face that was quite heavily wrinkled, but her eyes were incredibly kind. The woman was wearing regular white pants and a purple long-sleeved sweater, along with a choker chain of rather glamorous pearls around her neck. She smelt of talcum powder and lavender soap. Jackie felt completely comfortable in the medium's presence, which was a monumental relief.
"Please take a seat, Jackie, will you? Just opposite me here on the walnut desk, on that chair over there. That's right. Now, I don't want you to tell me anything," she said, fixing her eyes steadily on Jackie. "But you have come here because someone has recently passed away. Someone very young. A child. Within the last year or so. Is that right?"
Jackie nodded her head.
"That's right,"
she said, her throat now closing up and constricting, as she tried desperately not to think about Lily. There was tears in the corner of her eyes. Could she dare to hope that Lily might come through to her with this woman?
"I'm seeing a dragonfly," said the psychic. "Now that is incredibly unusual. Does that mean anything to you by any chance?"
"No," said Jackie, wondering where Merrill was going with this.
Oh, now I see," said the psychic. "A little girl has stepped forward. She says her name it begins with an L. Oh, she's showing me a lily flower. That must mean her name is Lily. I'm getting the name Lily. Is that right?"
Jackie's mouth practically dropped open. How could the medium possibly know the name of her daughter was Lily?
"She tells me she's 3 years old. If she was alive, she'd be 4 now. She's showing me how she passed. There was a dragonfly. That's why she was showing me a dragonfly. It got her attention. It got her very excited. It was flying over a body of water. It looks like a swimming pool to me. She ran straight after this dragonfly. She believed it to be a fairy. She said she loved fairies because you told her so many stories about fairies."
"Yes, that's true. I did," said Jackie, her whole body shaking in disbelief.
"Lily loved to hear stories about fairies. I made them up for her all the time, because of the legends concerning the fae. My grandfather, you see, he was from Ireland, and he knew so many stories about the fae, and when I was growing up, he told me all about them. So it was natural for me to talk about the fae to Lily." "Well, your daughter says the dragonfly was so pretty, she was convinced it was a fairy. She ran after it through the open gate of the pool area, because I see an open gate around the swimming pool. I see her running after the dragonfly. She tried to grab the dragonfly as it was flying over the pool. You know how dragonflies love water. She wants you to know she didn't suffer. She was very happy, and is very happy where she is. She says she's with Grandpa Paul and Grandma Angela. Does that mean anything to you? There's a white fluffy dog with her. She's carrying the dog in her arms. The thing is very, very tiny." "Oh, my goodness! I can't believe this. Paul and Angela are my Irish grandparents. Paul was my grandfather that would talk all about the fae to me. And many of the stories he told me, well, I exaggerated slightly and told them to my daughter. They had a tiny dog. I think it was a miniature Maltese called Lancelot, if I'm not wrong. I think I remember it being called Lancelot. They loved that dog so very much. How could you possibly know all this?" "I'm only telling you what I'm seeing,"
said Merrill, handing Jackie some tissues to blow her nose and wipe away her tears.
"It's very good to have a cry, dear. Let it all out. Don't be embarrassed. Your daughter Lily is telling me that she is not very happy at the moment. She says you blame yourself for what happened to her, and that grieves her greatly." "But it's my fault," said Jackie insistently. "If it wasn't for me, my daughter would not be dead. How could I not blame myself for that? I accidentally left the pool gate open, and if I hadn't done that, my daughter would still be alive. Lily is telling me you mustn't blame yourself. She says it was her time to go. She says that no matter what you might have done, she was still meant to exit this life very early. She's very mature for a 3-year-old girl, I might tell you. A very bright thing, and a pretty thing too. I can see her heart-shaped face, her blue eyes, and blonde ringlets."
Jackie stared at the psychic medium through confounded eyes.
"You've just described my Lily to me. She has a heart-shaped face, blue eyes exactly like yours, and blonde ringlets. But why? It doesn't make any sense. Why would a 3-year-old need to exit this life early? It's the cruelest thing for any parent to have to go through." "Your grandfather is stepping forward. He's telling me, Jackie, that it was Lily's time to cross over, so no one was to blame for the accident. He was waiting for her when she crossed over to the other side. She was not alone, not even for a second. When people cross over to the other side, there is always someone they know who has crossed over waiting for them, because when they don't know they're dead, they need to be informed that they have passed. Our spiritual body is like a glove that fits inside the physical body. Your daughter is very happy where she is, and your grandfather is telling me he will take good care of her for you. until you come over to the other side. He says stop blaming yourself for what happened, because there are no accidents in this world. He said everything is as it is meant to be. He's most insistent about this. He says you will have another child very soon. A little girl, I believe, is coming into your life. I'm losing him. They're both going away. I'm sorry, I've lost the connection."
When Jackie had said her goodbyes to the kind psychic medium, she sat in the passenger side seat next to Bernie and stared out of the window.
"Well," said Bernie, "how did it go?" "You're being awfully quiet. Was it an absolute disaster?"
"It was absolutely extraordinary," said Jackie, staring out of the windscreen window. She turned to look at Bernie directly.
"That woman connected with our Lily. I know she did. She wasn't a charlatan." "She did?" Bernie asked. "What did she say?" "She said that Lily was with my grandparents and their little Maltese poodle Lancelot. She said it wasn't my fault that Lily had died. She said it was her time to go. I got the impression that if it wasn't the swimming pool accident that occurred, that Lily would have died some other way. She was meant to go. She was only meant to be here for a very short time. I was informed that there are no accidents, that everything is the way it is meant to be. Lily talked about the fairy stories I would share with her all the time. No one could have known that." "Good Lord," said Bernie. "You were hearing from Lily for sure. You always made up stories about fairies to her. She loved talking about fairies all the time. You started talking about fairies because your grandfather from Ireland never shut up about the fae, did he? He was most insistent they were real. You got so much pleasure listening to his stories as a girl, so you decided to make fairy stories up for little Lily to enjoy. I would listen to you telling them to her, and her eyes would be so wide she'd hang on to every single word. How absolutely extraordinary that the medium should pick up on all of this. Who would have thought it? The mind boggles."
"That is why she died, Bernie. The swimming pool gate was left open, and our little girl chased after a dragonfly. She thought the dragonfly was a fairy and got terribly excited. The dragonfly was gliding over the water as they always do. You know how they, glide over the water with their wings spread out. Well, our little girl reached out to grab the dragonfly. She wanted to catch it with her hands, and in doing so she fell straight into the water. She said she felt no pain. One moment she was literally in the pool, and the next she was with my grandfather. Apparently he was waiting for her to take her to the other side. They knew it was her time to go, and my grandfather told me not to worry, that he was watching over our Lily."
Bernie was silent for a brief moment. He scratched his head very thoughtfully.
"I can see why a child would believe a dragonfly was a fairy. At that age it would be easy to believe that. They're very ethereal, aren't they? Aren't you glad you visited the medium? Do you feel any better?"
"Oh, I feel so much better, Bernie. I'm so glad you persuaded me to go. I was very against it. I thought it was wrong to go and see a medium. And even if it is, I don't care. I do feel so much better, as if a weight has been lifted off my mind. When the medium said that our daughter told her it was her time to go, and that she was happy where she was, I felt immense relief. It was as if a massive burden of guilt had been lifted off me. I did, of course, try to ask the medium to find out why our little girl had to leave when she did, but I wasn't given any answers about that. When my grandfather came forward, he said he would be looking after Lily, and then he also affirmed that she was meant to be on the other side. That was made profoundly clear to me.
"Well, maybe you weren't meant to know why our daughter's life was cut short," said Bernie. "But if I was to wage a bet, I would say that some of life's greatest lessons come through tragedy, and sometimes we have to hurt a great deal to grow. I know it seems incredibly cruel and very unfair, but sometimes life is exactly like that. How can we possibly be empathetic towards anyone if we ourselves have not been through grief? It is when we've gone through tumultuous challenges that we are able to understand and appreciate true compassion. Think about it.
Well, if what you say is true, Bernie, losing Lily, if that was supposed to be some kind of life lesson, all I can say is that really, really sucks. Surely there are easier ways for people to learn compassion. Losing Lily was the worst thing that has ever happened to me. And if I'm supposed to learn something from that, I don't get it. I really don't. I've just learned how to be incredibly miserable. That's what I've learnt.
I know, love. Losing Lily broke our hearts. It was a cruel thing for any parent to have to endure. But we're not alone. There are many parents out there that have lost their children at a very young age. It happens to the best of us. What else did the medium say?
Well, she told me we were going to have a little girl very soon. Can you believe that?
Well, didn't I tell you that we can start again to try for a family? It doesn't mean we have to forget about our Lily, but it does mean we can move forward with our lives, does it not?
I'm not sure I'm ready to have another baby, Bernie. But the medium was insistent it would be soon. And given how I struggled to get pregnant with Lily, that came as a huge surprise to me. If the truth be told, I don't think I'm physically capable of falling pregnant at the moment. And I'm not sure I'm actually ready to be a mother again. Going to this medium has helped a lot, of course it has. But I can't stop thinking about little Lily. But if my late grandfather is looking after her, then she's in a good place, and I can be assured of that.
Well, I think that is very reassuring. Anyway, I know Lily is always on your mind, and she is on mine too. I think of her every day. But let's just go one step at a time, shall we? That's what I say.
Jackie nodded.
Apparently Lily was very sad, because I was upset about her passing. That got to me, you know. I don't want to think of her being sad on the other side. It's like my grief is holding her back from being happy.
Well, of course Lily would be sad if she knew her mother was not happy. If you grieve her, you're probably holding her back in the spirit realm, stopping her from being completely happy because of your grief. Maybe you should try to be happy for her sake, and for us as well, for the health of our relationship.
You're right. I do have to make an effort with my life,
said Jackie, sounding more determined than ever.
I'm tired of being so miserably depressed all the time.
It would seem that Jackie really did start to make a significant effort to be more upbeat in her life, but again, it was a work in progress for her. One day, while Bernie was at work, Jackie was pottering around very casually in the kitchen, cleaning the surfaces like she did every day like clockwork. It had become almost like a ritualistic routine for her, while she was on her way back to wellness. Jackie spent a lot of her time cleaning. It helped her soak up the residues of her lugubrious melancholia like a sponge, for keeping busy is always a good idea when you've been down in the dumps for a very long time and need to pick yourself up. For Jackie, doing the household chores seemed to almost calm her down, and served to while away the long lonely hours while Bernie was away at work. But after having visited the psychic medium, Jackie now felt as if she had permission from her own daughter Lily to try and be happy again for her daughter's sake. So these days Jackie was striving to have a much more upbeat, optimistic attitude towards things, so that invariably when Bernie returned home from work, he would not be greeted by the usual despondent, downhearted wife. So Jackie was trying to make efforts in all areas of her life to overcome all her emotional challenges, to become more sanguine and cheery. Bernie's words echoed in her mind.
Maybe if you are sad, love, you are probably holding our Lily back in the afterlife. For if you refuse to let her go, then she's never going to become all she can be.
Jackie was now determined to find her way through the foggy mire that had suffocated her. She realized that going to the medium had been liberating, for it had unleashed the burden of her guilt that had weighed her down, rather like a backpack containing concrete blocks. It would seem that learning about Lily's death and realizing it was preordained had released the stronghold of despair, which had snapped rather like an elastic band, especially when the medium had assured her that one day Jackie and her little girl would be reunited again. Jackie finally felt as if she could breathe. After Lily's death, Jackie had been tempted to drink to excess, but when she'd started knocking back the alcohol, the red wine she had drunk so liberally had brought on the most unbearable migraine headaches, only serving to exacerbate rather than soothe her misery. In some way those headaches had saved her from going down a precariously slippery slope that can so easily lead to alcoholic addiction. So she did have to be grateful for small mercies, for she hadn't touched a drop since. She had thought, of course, long and hard about what the medium had said to her, that she was going to have another child again, a little girl. But Jackie didn't want another child to replace little Lily. For her it felt like betrayal in some way. Loving another child after having lost Lily to such a tragic accident seemed almost incomprehensible. The medium might have been right about many things, but she had got her wires twisted believing Jackie would have another girl very soon. If it did happen one day, it was a long way in the future, she thought. It was on this magnificently beautiful, unassuming day, when the sunlight twinkled mischievously through the kitchen window, casting its soft shadows all over the kitchen floor, so the room was bathed in a very flattering ethereal light. It made the day seem as close to perfect as you could possibly get. Jackie's two beloved bulldogs were lying, their legs stretched out on the kitchen floor. They were lapping up the sun appreciatively, like a couple of slightly chubby salamanders. The day seemed almost cruel in its beauty, for it was like the day when Jackie had lost little Lily, and there were some things Jackie did not want to remember. As beautiful days such as this were sometimes tinged with the indelible fabric of the past that haunted Jackie on a daily basis, but she no longer wanted to go to that dark place ever again, for it had dragged her down and served no earthly purpose at all, other than to make her all the more miserable. The swimming pool this morning was turquoise in its resplendence. It sparkled like an opaque jewel in the morning light. Jackie had not been able to fill it in, for she loved swimming so much, and it would have been a pity to destroy the swimming pool, just because of a tragic accident, as filling it in would never bring Lily back. So what was the point anyway? "Right," said Jackie in a determined voice, as she looked down fondly at the family's two bulldogs. "We're going to go for a walk. Walkies!" It was the first time in a long time that Jackie had ever contemplated going for a walk like this. Her two bulldogs lifted up their heads rather doubtfully. They appeared somewhat bewildered and bemused, wondering possibly if they'd heard right. Their ears twitched, and their reticently reserved tails appeared to wiggle ever so slightly. The dogs knew very well from past experience that the only one in the Peterson household over the last year that had used the word walkies on them was Bernie, as Lily had pretty much lived the life of a hermit, after Lily's tragic passing, that is. But it was like she was pushing through the cocoon of her despair and breaking free from those boundaries. The bulldogs looked at Jackie rather suspiciously, as if her saying walkies was some cruel, twisted joke on her part that could not be trusted. But when she headed towards the entrance hall and replaced the slippers she was wearing with the walking shoes and socks she'd left out, the bulldogs began to charge ebulliently out of the kitchen towards the front door, like an uncontrolled cyclone. Their tails began to wag effusively. Not that they had much of a tail, of course. They must have thought they'd died and gone to heaven, as Jackie was taking them for a walk, and she hadn't even attempted a casual stroll outside the front door for a whole year now. As Jackie sashayed out of the house, the heaviness that had anchored her to the mooring spot for so long, like a donkey tethered to its stable, seemed to suddenly dissipate. She felt so much lighter, lighter than she'd done for a very long time. Jackie chuckled to herself as she watched her two slightly tubby bulldogs happily charging towards the woods. She couldn't help but smile at their unbridled enthusiasm, and she realized in that quintessential, very special moment that she hadn't smiled for a very long time. Things were looking up for her. It was magnificent walking in the woods, and Jackie could only wonder why in her deepest moments of despair and sadness, when she'd locked herself away in the house, like a woman on house arrest, and had laid in bed for hours on end, curled up in a fetal position, why she hadn't forced herself to take a hearty walk in the woods, for it would have been like medicine for her. Bernie had encouraged her often enough, of course, telling her that a bit of fresh air and exercise would do her the world of good. But Jackie had shunned his salient advice in favour of doing absolutely nothing, which meant that every day had dragged on, like a life sentence, which had no end. There was something so soulfully rewarding about walking through some of these ancient trees, as their hefty trunks forcefully anchored themselves to the ground, spreading out their burgeoning roots unapologetically through the soil. It would seem their stoic reassurance helped Jackie to suddenly feel so much more grounded, so much more safe and secure. There was something so magical about all these trees, and this morning, as her walking boots crunched the twigs and leaf litter beneath her feet, she suddenly became so energized, as if the sweet perfumes of nature had lifted her spirits exponentially, rather like a life-giving tonic. The branches of the trees began to bob up and down in the breeze, and in their whispering, Jackie was sure they were saying, "All is well, all is well." Had she imagined that, she wondered? But it really was as if the trees were talking to her in their serenity, and they were offering her the serene comfort only nature can so generously provide. Jackie realized how incredibly unfit she was. She hadn't taken any exercise for an entire year, and for years she had been doing hundreds of laps in the swimming pool to keep herself fit. But these days she had become all but a shadow of her former self. Her heartbeat quickened as she increased her pace energetically, as she started to take strides down the long, rather curvy woodland trails. She watched her two bulldogs barking excitedly as they began to scramble rather clumsily after a nimble rabbit, who made a quick dart towards his burrow and was gone from their sight. Her bulldogs refused to give up. Huffing and puffing, they ran towards the burrow. They began to bark excitedly, while they dug rather aimlessly around the burrow with their chunky paws, in the faint hope that the rabbit might re-emerge. Jackie laughed. "You're not going to get the rabbit back, Poppy," she teased. "The rabbit is gone. There's no chance of that." It was while the bulldogs were frantically digging around the rabbit's burrow that she saw him. She was convinced it had to be a trick of the light. It had to be. Was she deceiving herself, she wondered? It had happened so very quickly. He was there for a brief second, and then gone. And like the trees that had whispered, "All is well," she was sure the creature was saying the very same, into her head, of course, in some kind of telepathic exchange. "All is well. All is well." One thing was for sure. She wasn't going to tell Bernie about this bizarre incident, because he wouldn't believe a word of it. Jackie was sure, though, that she'd seen a strapping Bigfoot, and that the creature had been staring at her very briefly, through very dark, soulful eyes, and then he'd just glided away, just like that, as if he'd never been there at all. Jackie knew she'd seen a Bigfoot. She was well versed in the subject that had been discussed on many occasions over the dinner table as a girl, where her father ridiculed the very suggestion that such a creature like Bigfoot could actually exist, describing the very possibility as absolute nonsense. Jackie's brother Wayne, however, did not agree, nor did he share his father's skepticism on the matter. He was fascinated by the subject of Bigfoot, and had gone on multiple excursions and intrepid adventures all over America in hot pursuit of the elusive creature. Jackie had found it irresistible to tease her brother rather mercilessly for his naivety in believing in the existence of Bigfoot. She had chuckled. "Are you kidding me, Wayne? Those creatures only exist in your imagination. They're a fictitious pipe dream." But in that brief second, everything had changed, while Jackie had walked the dogs in the woodgrove, for she was certain she had just encountered a Bigfoot. And furthermore, she was absolutely sure he had said to her rather telepathically, just like the trees had done,
All will be well. Yet if he was real, why had the bulldogs not picked up on his scent at once? Why were they relentlessly trying to get to the rabbit in the burrow? Why did they remain completely oblivious to the Bigfoot's presence? And why did they not even notice he was there, and then he wasn't? Jackie wondered if in her grief that she was now seeing things, hallucinating perhaps. The rest of the walk was extremely pleasant, but Jackie sadly saw no more sightings of the curious creature, which made her feel a tad disappointed. He had been so Herculean in size, covered in long flowing dark hair, the colour of charcoal. He had had such a human-like face, and whose soulful eyes had been expressive and kind. "You imagined what you saw," she told herself very firmly. "You'll never live this down if you admit to your brother Wayne that Bigfoots might possibly be real after all." Little did she know that that afternoon was going to bring many more surprises that would spin her world around abruptly on its axis in a very positive, reassuring way, a way she never saw coming. It all began later that afternoon, when Jackie was trying to draw a picture of the Bigfoot she was sure she'd seen in the woods. She was quite the artist, and had not used her watercolour pencils for a very long time. All of a sudden she heard a car rolling up the driveway, and she walked over to the window, her heart sinking, when she recognised the rather rusty Volvo, parked in the driveway. It belonged to 16-year-old Kirsty, who would be 17 by now, of course. What did Kirsty want? She had not seen that annoying young girl for over a year now, and she had hoped that she'd never run into the likes of her ever again. As one way or another, Kirsty had blood on her hands, for she had failed to watch over Lily for her on that fateful day when Jackie's life had almost imploded. If Kirsty had the audacity to ask for her cleaning job back, she could think again, because that was not going to ever happen. Jackie wondered if she should hide in the house, perhaps, and avoid answering the door to Kirsty. But then she realised that sometimes it was best to face your demons head-on. She could tell Kirsty to bog off, of course, and to leave her well alone. And hopefully the thick-skinned 17-year-old would finally get the message. What an absolute cheek, coming over to the house after everything that had happened with Lily. That young teenager had quite the nerve on her. Either that or the impenetrable hide of a rhinoceros. Jackie could hear the familiar click-clock of Kirsty's platform heels. Some things never changed. That girl always wore platform heels, even when she was cleaning the house. The doorbell rang, and there was a rapping sound on the door, as if Kirsty was absolutely determined to get her attention, and probably knew very well that Jackie had been hiding in the house for a very long time. Word around town was that she had become a hermit. People had whispered behind closed curtains things about Jackie that they didn't say out in the open. "Poor thing! I think the woman's melancholia is going to kill her. It's that husband I feel very sorry for. He has to put up with his wife squirreling herself away in the house, as if she's gone into permanent hibernation. That's no way for anybody to live, is it? I know she lost a child in a tragedy like that, and it's desperately sad, but life does go on, does it not?" Jackie meandered rather cautiously to the front door, and as she expected, there was Kirsty standing in the doorway, just like old times. But there was something profoundly different about Kirsty's demeanour. She looked like a 17-year-old girl going on 40. But then tragedy can do that to a human being, and no doubt Kirsty had been burdened by so much of the guilt of failing to watch over little Lily in her charge, and it probably had eaten away at her, for it was very clear that there were dark circles under her eyes that appeared puffy, and her skinny knees were very pronounced under the cotton sundress that she was wearing. She'd certainly lost a lot of weight. Kirsty looked gaunt, and there was definitely melancholia in her eyes that lacked the spirit they had once possessed. "Jackie, please may I come in? It's very important," she asked. "I'm not sure that's a good idea, Kirsty. Frankly, I'm really surprised you've got the audacity to come back here, after everything that happened with Lily. You've got a bloody cheek. Didn't I say I never wanted to see you again?" "Look, Jackie, I know that Lily isn't coming back, And I'm so sorry about what happened that day when she died. I really am. You're sorry? Is that all you can say, Kirsty? That's rich coming from you. I asked you to do one thing, didn't I? Watch over my little girl for a few minutes. And you couldn't do that, could you? You were more interested in your fancy man. I wonder, are you still seeing Ryan?
Yes, we're together, said Kirsty. I'm not as fickle as you think, Jackie. Ryan's been good for me. He's helped me through some very dark times emotionally. It's been tough for me, Jackie.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're happy.
Happy? Do I look like I'm happy, Jackie? I'm anything but happy. Every single day I'm haunted by what happened to little Lily. I loved her too, you know. You're right. I failed in watching over Lily from the kitchen window, and I'm sorry for what happened. But you're not entirely without blame either, Jackie. Jackie raised a brow.
And what's that supposed to mean, Kirsty?
I'm just saying, Jackie, that Lily's death was a tragic accident. That's what it was, an accident. Yes, I failed to watch over her for you from the kitchen window. But you also failed in your responsibilities, didn't you? You failed to close the gate to the swimming pool. You thought you had, but that still didn't mean you did it? You failed to close it. But things like that happen, Jackie. It was a terrible, terrible accident. And a day doesn't go by when I don't grieve little Lily's passing. She was a beautiful 3-year-old girl, and I'll never, ever forget her.
Jackie glared at Kirsty. What are you doing here, Kirsty? That's what I want to know. Did you come here to add salt to my wounds? Remind me of my grievous loss? Or did you come here to ask for your cleaning job back? Because if the latter is true, that is not going to happen.
I don't want a cleaning job, Jackie. I'm here to talk about something that may be of interest to you. Are you going to let me in or not? Or do I need to stand here all day?
Why can't you tell me what it is you want, Kirsty, here and now?
I'd rather talk about it indoors, if I may. A cup of coffee would be very nice, Jackie. And you do make a good cup of coffee.
You've got a bloody cheek, Kirsty, coming here like a fox in the chicken coop to stir up trouble.
On the contrary, Jackie, what I have to tell you might help ease some of your pain. Over losing your daughter, that is. At least I hope it will.
Nothing is going to do that for me, Kirsty. And if you think that, you're being extremely optimistic and very much in denial. You must be very delusional. Your coming here is bringing those horrifying memories back to me. But you may as well come in, because I can see you're determined to do so,
said Jackie rather reluctantly, opening the door to allow Kirsty into the house. Kirsty followed Jackie straight to the kitchen.
So what is this all about, Kirsty?
Asked Jackie, turning around to face her head on. Are you going to make that coffee or not? Kirsty asked Jackie. I'm very parched, Jackie, and I don't want to talk to you until I've had something to drink.
You've got a nerve coming here, Kirsty. I'll give you that,
said Jackie, strutting over to the kettle and preparing some coffee for Kirsty.
It's black, am I right, with no sugar?
You remembered. I'm impressed.
That's the problem, Kirsty. I remember far too much.
Jackie brought the coffee over to the table and sat down opposite Kirsty.
So what is it you want to talk about, Kirsty? I wouldn't think we had much to say to each other any more. But go on anyway.
Kirsty gingerly took a sip of the steaming coffee, and with both hands she cradled the mug so tightly that Jackie observed her knuckles were almost white. It was clear that Kirsty was no more comfortable being in her presence than Jackie was in Kirsty's presence. What on earth could this young lady possibly want, Jackie wondered. As if answering Jackie's internal dialogue, Kirsty finally burst out. Jackie, I'm here because I have a cousin called Crystal. She's only 20 years old. She's sitting in my Volvo right now, in the passenger seat with her daughter on her lap. I told her to stay put in the car until I go out the front door and wave at her, to tell her to come in and meet you herself. She's got a 3-year-old daughter with her in the car, who's the splitting image of little Lily in every way. She gave birth to Amelia at a very young age. Her parents both begged her to have an abortion, because they knew that having a baby at this time in her life was a big mistake. But the trouble is, Crystal refused. As much like me, ethically she's very against that sort of thing. The child's name is Amelia. She's the sweetest little thing you have ever beheld. You'll love her. Everybody does. She's adorable.
Oh, how perfectly lovely. So you're telling me about a child that looks just like my Lily. You really think I want to hear that? Are you completely insane? What on earth is going on with you, Kirsty? Do you really want to prolong my anguish? Rub salt in the wound so it stings all the more, by reminding me of my losses? Is this some kind of sick, warped joke of yours? Because if it is, I'm not laughing. You thought bringing a child here that might remind me of my little girl would make me a happy bunny, did you? I don't know what is going on in your head, Kirsty. I really don't.
It's not like that, Jackie. You misunderstand me. I'd never ever want to hurt you. That's the last thing I'd want to do. I want to make up for your loss in any way I can. I want to help you, Jackie. I want to make a difference in your life if that's at all possible. I'm not the monster you're painting me out to be. I know I played a part in Lily's death, and I do blame myself for what happened. But you haven't been out of my thoughts for a single minute, and I really want to make it better for you, Jackie, if I can.
I think it's a bit late for that, Kirsty. How can you possibly make anything better for me? There is nothing you can do to take away my pain. And I do think your coming here was a very bad idea.
Jackie, you're getting the wrong end of the stick because you haven't let me finish yet. I wish you would listen to what I'm saying. My cousin Crystal loves her 3-year-old daughter Amelia very much, but she's not in a position to be a mother or a good mother to her daughter. She wants to travel the world, you see. She wants to do something very productive with her life, get a degree or something at university. She's not ready to settle down yet. Far from it, in fact. I told her all about you, and about your dreadful loss, and how her child, well, is the doppelganger for the one you've lost. She wants to put her child up for adoption, you see, and give it a great home with someone. She was wondering, after everything I've been telling her about you, if you would be interested in adopting her little girl, legally, of course. I remember you saying very clearly how it was a desperate struggle for you to fall pregnant with Lily in the first place. And this little girl needs a mother. You would be perfect for her, Jackie, absolutely perfect, and I know she would love you. I really do.
Are you telling me that this woman called Crystal wants to give up her own daughter? Is she insane? What kind of a mother does that?
No, she's not insane. She's the most down-to-earth, practical person you've ever met, Jackie. She loves her little daughter, but she doesn't believe she can give her daughter the life her daughter deserves, not at the moment anyway. She's not ready to commit to being a mother yet. She's still too young for that. She wants to do that when she's in her 30s, like you are.
So this Crystal wants me to adopt her daughter? Asked Jackie, looking bemused. I don't think so, Kirsty. It's a nice thought of yours, though. Thank you for considering me. But I'm sorry no child can replace my Lily.
That's not the point, Jackie. I'm not suggesting for a single second that any child on this earth could ever replace your Lily. That would be impossible, and I realise that, of course. But this little girl can bring so much fullness to your life. Kids do that, you know. I remember you told me, Jackie, specifically that you wanted more children, and you were worried you might not get pregnant again. You said you would consider adoption. And I did think it would be a good solution for you in the circumstances. I think you should meet little Amelia before you make any decisions. Rash decisions, I mean. Jackie didn't have time to protest, as Kirsty had run to the front door and was waving madly at the occupant in the Volvo. Jackie was standing in the kitchen, feeling somewhat bemused. She watched the Volvo door swing open, and a young lady holding the hand of the cutest 3-year-old girl that Jackie had ever seen, apart from Lily, of course. The girl was holding a fluffy pink teddy bear in her arms, clutching it in the way that Lily would have done. Then before Jackie could find any words, the little girl was standing in the kitchen next to her mother Crystal, and Jackie's mouth just dropped open, for the little girl looked exactly like Lily. It almost tore at her heart. She wanted to rush towards the child and envelop her lovingly in her arms, but she didn't feel it would be an appropriate thing for her to do. The little girl was looking up at Jackie with very wide, curious eyes. "Jackie, this is my cousin Crystal," said Kirsty, eagerly making the introductions. "This is her little girl, Amelia. Amelia's 3 years old, as I was telling you." "Hello," said little Amelia, rather shyly, putting a finger in her mouth. "Hello, Amelia," said Jackie. "So how old are you?" "I'm 3 years old," she said shyly, sticking up 3 fingers to show Jackie. At that moment Jackie had fallen, hook, line and sinker for this little girl, not just because she reminded her of her daughter Lily, but because she was the sweetest thing Jackie had ever laid eyes on. So refusing to adopt this beautiful little girl would be like missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime that had opened up for Jackie like a lotus flower. It was decided that little Amelia would live with Jackie and Bernie for a month, and if they felt that the child fitted in with their lives, they would be able to adopt her. But after 3 days, both Jackie and her husband Bernie had fallen hard for little Amelia, and they couldn't imagine living without her, for she fit into their lives as perfectly as a glove, and it felt as if she'd always belonged. The Petersons were eager to get these adoption papers signed as quickly as possible, and Bernie was extremely grateful to Crystal, because Crystal had given them a gift that you can't put any price on. So in his appreciation, he wrote her a hefty cheque so she could embark on her worldwide trip, which she did very gratefully. It would seem Crystal now kept sending the family postcards from all over the world. It was agreed that Amelia's mother would remain an intrinsic part of their lives and could visit Amelia whenever she liked. But before long, Amelia was calling Jackie Mummy, and Jackie felt like the heaviness of the dark cloud that had weighed down heavily on her heart had finally lifted once and for all. Before long she was regularly seen around town with her little girl, and the Jackie that had lost her will to live had come back to life again and been revived, and it was all because of a 3-year-old girl called Amelia, whose presence had made the loss of losing little Lily a little bit more bearable. Jackie reflected on the medium that she had visited, that had lived in that twee whitewashed house, and she realized that everything the medium had told her had come true, because yes, indeed, a little girl had come into her life, but in a very unorthodox way. Bernie loved little Amelia as if she was their very own. Jackie taught little Amelia never to go near their swimming pool. She drummed it into her little girl, so much so that Amelia knew to keep away from the water. Jackie made sure that the swimming pool was out of bounds and covered all year long, and that the gates around the pool were double bolted, for she was absolutely determined that no accident could befall little Amelia, and she would only make the swimming pool accessible to the girl when she was sure she was a strong swimmer. Jackie wasn't prepared to take any risks the second time around, so there we are. One day Wayne, who was Jackie's younger brother, came to stay with the Petersons for a week. Wayne adored little Amelia. She kept calling him Uncle Wally, as she couldn't pronounce his full name properly, but Wayne seemed to enjoy being called Wally. Little Amelia would sit on his lap, and he'd read to her, for he refused his niece nothing. Jackie had always been close to her brother Wayne, and then one evening over drinks in the lounge, she told her brother about the paradoxical encounter she had had in the woods. She told this to him in strict confidence, for she knew if she was to tell Bernie of the strange paradoxical event, he would insist that she had seen a shadow or something else equally as vague. For Bernie clearly thought the idea of cryptid creatures living in America was ludicrous, just like her father had done. Jackie knew Wayne would listen, and maybe make sense out of Jackie's rather bizarre encounter, so she decided to confide in her brother, while Bernie was conveniently out on the patio, with little Amelia, tossing hamburgers over the grill, and the smell of the sizzling delicious meat wafted into the living room. "You see, we're making hamburger patties for dinner tonight, and sausages, Amelia. You like sausages, don't you? Do you want to turn them for Daddy?" Jackie smiled as she heard Amelia saying, "Yes, I want to turn the sausages. I like sausages. I'm very hungry, Daddy."
We're going to eat them very soon, Amelia, but we need to make sure they're cooked through first. They just need a little bit longer on the grill," Jackie heard Bernie telling Amelia. "But you can watch over them for me. Make sure that nobody takes them away from the grill. You wouldn't want to go hungry, would you?" At this, Amelia started to chuckle. Jackie immediately turned her attention to her brother Wayne. "I've got something to tell you, Wayne. I'm going to tell you while Bernie's not around. I really don't want him to be listening in on our conversation, because I know if he did, he'd probably laugh at me." "You do surprise me. You mean you've got a secret that you're keeping from Bernie?" said Wayne, his hazel brown eyes lighting up mischievously, as he rather reflectively stroked his moustache. "Who's a naughty girl, then? What are you hiding from the husband? I'm intrigued. I had no idea you two kept secrets from each other." Jackie shrugged her shoulders nonchalantly. "It's not like that, Wayne. I don't have secrets from Bernie. But if I told him about what I'm going to tell you now, that's the problem. He'd laugh at me, never take me seriously for a second. He would dismiss it out of hand. But I know you wouldn't, and that's why I'm telling you, because I need to offload in some way, and you're the perfect person to tell this to." "Now you've got my attention, sister. I'm trying to think what this could possibly be. I'm drawing the short straw here, I'm afraid. A secret that you're keeping from Bernie, that you want to share with me. For the life of me, I can't think what it could be." Jackie took a swig of her glass of wine, as if she suddenly needed the alcohol. This was the first time she'd drunk in a long time. But she was sticking to white wine, because red wine gave her terrible migraines. And somehow the glass of wine gave her some boldness. Boldness that she needed to tell her brother what she'd been longing to share with someone for a very long time. "Remember when we were children? You were obsessed with Bigfoot, and I used to tease you relentlessly about it, and tell you were being fanciful, because those cryptid creatures only existed in legends. I remember you always used to watch everything on television referring to the cryptid creature. You'd listen to people's bizarre encounters and believe them all, and even Dad would make fun of you." "I remember very well," said Wayne. "You all gave me such a hard time apart from Mother." "I know. Dad was very cruel to you, I thought. He really did ridicule you about the subject. Thought it was absolutely ridiculous. But then again, Dad has always been a very scientific man, has he not? In other words, he has to see something to believe it. And I guess I've always been wired much the same way. But Mum was very different, wasn't she? She was much more open-minded about things like you are." "That's true. Mum, I'm very glad to say, stood up for me. She was the one that gave you both a hard time. She'd tell you to leave me the hell alone. She said that you needed to respect my opinion on Bigfoot, whether you thought it was foolish or not. She'd also say there was no reason that creatures like Bigfoot couldn't exist in North America, and that you and Dad were the ones that were more ignorant, because your minds were closed off to such possibilities." "Well, it turns out Mum was right to stand up for you, Wayne. When I look back at my behaviour towards you, and the way I ridiculed you, I must admit I feel very ashamed. I thought I knew so much back then. I thought I had life all figured out. But little did I realise I was the naive one, not you. I remember you were so passionate about Bigfoot, weren't you? You even had a big poster of Bigfoot on your wall. I do remember that. And then, of course, you travelled all over the world in search for the creature. Dad thought you were stark raving mad, but Mum encouraged you every bit of the way, because Mum was always like that." "Where is this going, sis? You're practically saying you feel bad for ridiculing me about my fascination for Bigfoot. I never thought I'd hear you say something like this in an entire month of Sundays. You do surprise me. You and Dad, you've always been scientific in your approach to life, and I did respect that, you know. If you don't see it, then it can't exist. But you could say that about many things, you know. Think about it, sis. If people had never seen a fish eagle, or never seen a polar bear, but they've seen them on documentaries, they believe in their existence because of those documentaries. But elusive creatures like Bigfoot are rarely ever recorded, so the existence of them seems to be unlikely. So that's why people are so quick to assume they don't exist. In my humble opinion, some species thrive because of the very fact that they remain elusive. And Bigfoot is one of those creatures. I just think, well, I need to apologize to you, that's all, Wayne, said Jackie rather gingerly. Go on, spit it out, Jackie, said Wayne, carefully putting down his glass of wine. He stared at his sister through wide eyes. You're not going to tell me you've seen a Bigfoot, are you, Jackie? Is that where this is going?
Well, that's just it, Wayne. I don't really know.
What do you mean you don't know? Asked Wayne, rubbing away the sweat that had gathered on his forehead with the back of his very large palm.
Well, you know I was in a dark place after losing Lily. It was a struggle getting up in the morning until I went and visited that psychic medium. Don't you remember?
Yes, of course I remember, said Wayne.
Well, that session with the psychic medium was transformative for me. All the heaviness lifted. So I remember going out of the house for the first time that year and taking the 2 bulldogs for a walk. I don't think they could believe their good fortune. Anyway, they started chasing after this poor little rabbit in the woods and were so consumed by their quarry, they failed to see what I saw.
What did you see, Jackie? Asked Wayne.
Well, I saw a Bigfoot, but it happened so fleetingly, so very fast. After the encounter, I doubted what I'd seen, and sometimes I still doubt that I actually saw it.
So you saw a Bigfoot in those woods? Do you know how many trips I've taken over North America, sis, with other Bigfoot enthusiasts like myself, in pursuit of the cryptid creature? I visited places far and wide where Bigfoots have been sighted. I even took that 3-week trip to Alaska for the very purpose of looking for a Bigfoot. And what happens? I find absolutely nothing. No evidence of anything. No sign of any Bigfoot activity. I was drawing blanks. It was so soul-destroying for me. When I told Dad about it all, he snorted at me disdainfully and told me I was chasing after a ghost that didn't even exist. He said to me, "You're never going to find anything, Wayne, because it doesn't exist. But you, sis, you take a casual stroll in the wood grove and you see a Bigfoot. Life can be so damned unfair, if you ask me."
Correction, Wayne. I think I saw a Bigfoot. There is a difference, you know. After the creature vanished, I was certain I must have imagined him. I began to doubt myself.
Wayne shook his head. You didn't imagine the Bigfoot? Sorry, but you may be good at making up fairy stories with your children. But you've never really had a great imagination. You're much more scientific like that. You may have been grief-stricken at the time when you saw the Bigfoot and had the paradoxical encounter, but I am certain your imagination was not playing tricks with you. You believe it was because when people see things out of the realms of what they consider to be real, their reaction is to doubt what they've seen. What did it look like, the Bigfoot, I mean?
Well, I saw it so fleetingly, didn't I? It was here one moment and gone the next. But it had a distinctive human face. It was covered in long black hair, and I believe it actually spoke to me in my head. Telepathically, you could say.
You think it spoke to you? For goodness sake, Jackie, it either did or it didn't.
Well, it wasn't an audible communication, as I was saying. It was telepathic. It was like he was saying in my head, "All will be well," as if he sensed the struggle I'd been through in losing my Lily.
Wow, that is incredible, sis. And I don't for a second think you imagined it. If you think the creature spoke to you in the head and said all is well, I don't doubt he did for a second.
Suddenly Wayne appeared to look quite animated. So Jackie realized, even after all these years, her brother's passion for the cryptic creature had not ceased.
You do believe me, don't you, Wayne?
Of course I believe you, sis. I don't doubt you for a second. I do wonder if the Bigfoot is still around. Tell me, since you've lived here, have you seen anything strange, perhaps?
Well, it's funny you should say that. There was a time. It was rather bizarre. It was after Lily's drowning accident. I remember walking to the pool where Lily had met her tragic end, and that was when I saw all these stones piled up together in a huge heap. They looked very significant, you know, like a memorial of some kind. And there was a single flower in the middle, a pink flower it was, very pretty. I thought one of the EMTs had done it, you know, as a memorial stone to Lily. But now I'm not so sure. It's kind of a strange thing for a person to do, don't you think? And I'd never observed it before. I mean, it was the next day I discovered it.
I don't think humans would do that. But a Bigfoot would likely do something like that, said Wayne, suddenly appearing excited. Anything else bizarre you can think of that comes to mind, sis? Try and think very hard. Anything strange that caught your attention, perhaps?
Well, I do know that when Bernie and I go into the woods on occasion, sometimes when we're walking the dogs, we both feel watched. But the bulldogs don't appear to notice a thing. They're so fixated on chasing rabbits. It's almost like they have a tunnel vision. I think when I say walkies to them, the word actually means chasing rabbits time. They're obsessed with bunnies. And let's just say they never have any luck chasing after them, because those rabbits run like grease lightning, and my bulldogs waddle after them, looking quite ungainly on their feet. I have to say it's terribly funny to watch. But yes, certainly when I go for walks with Bernie, I do feel as if something is watching me. And once again, I tell myself I'm imagining it.
I'm sure you're not imagining it, sis, said Wayne.
Then there was something else, as it happens.
There was? Asked Wayne, his eyes focused on Jackie intently.
Well, you know when Lily was alive, she was fixated by the woods. She was always waving at something. And when I asked her who she was waving at, she would say it was a bear. I didn't think much of it at the time, because we do get bears here, you know, from time to time. But I wonder if it might possibly have been the Bigfoot she was seeing, the same one that laid the memorial for her outside the swimming pool. I do know that soon after we adopted Amelia, she also began waving at something very enthusiastically in the woods, when we were out of doors together. I asked her what she was waving at, and she said she was waving at the bear man. So 2 children have talked about waving at something in the woods. Lily talked about it being a bear, and Amelia talks about it as being a bear man. So I'm pretty sure that even Amelia may possibly have seen the Bigfoot, but I can't be certain about anything. She will say bear man, Mummy. The bear man is waving at me. But when I look at where she's pointing, I see absolutely nothing. So I naturally assume it's her imagination playing tricks on her. But it might be something.
Bigfoots are very elusive, said Wayne. But I think from what you've been telling me, there's definitely been a Bigfoot on this property. But whether he's still around is debatable. I believe the creatures travel over long distances in search of food, and they remain extremely elusive. I'd like to see if I could spot the Bigfoot you've seen myself. I don't hold up much hope in that regard, though. The amount of times I've gone to places, sis, with Bigfoot enthusiasts such as myself, spending a great deal of my hard-earned money on travel costs and so forth. I mean, I've gone into woods in the middle of the night, made wood knocks, let out whoops, you know, the sort of thing. But I've always returned home empty-handed, feeling a tad foolish, I suppose. But I still unequivocally believe in the existence of Bigfoot. I really do. At that point, or rather inopportune moment, so to speak, Bernie had entered the lounge. He had overheard Wayne saying that Bigfoot was real, and there was a large smirk that developed on his face, which confirmed to Jackie, of course, that not telling her husband about her absurd encounter in the woods had indeed been a wise thing for her to do. "You believe in Bigfoot, Wayne?" he said mockingly. "Come on, bro. You can't be serious." Wayne stiffened rather uncomfortably and said, "Laugh at me as much as you like, Bernie. I'm used to people mocking me. But yes, as it happens, I do believe the cryptid creature is real."
What is Bigfoot? Asked Amelia, with wide, curious eyes. Nothing for you to concern yourself with, sweetheart, said Jackie. It's just a fairy story, love, insisted Bernie. Amelia's eyes appeared to widen. I like stories about fairies. I know you do, love, said Bernie. But you said you're hungry, didn't you? I was just about to tell your mother that dinner is served. The hamburgers are ready. Jackie was very glad that evening that the subject of Bigfoot was no longer discussed, as the family's burgeoning appetites had allowed the subject to slip away very conveniently. Wayne and Jackie exchanged secret looks together, and Jackie could tell that a light had gone on in her brother's eyes that had been fueled by her confiding in him about her rather absurd encounter with the Bigfoot in the woods. Bernie's account, when Jackie told me her rather absurd story about encountering a Bigfoot in the woods, I didn't doubt for a single second that what she was telling me was true. I knew my sister Jackie had suffered a great deal, losing her little daughter Lily in that tragic drowning accident in the swimming pool. She had blamed herself for what had happened, as any mother in her position likely would have done. But thankfully, after she visited the psychic medium, it was like the weight of her lugubrious melancholia had finally lifted and almost melted away. Let's just say, after the miraculous arrival of little Amelia in my sister's life, I was very glad that the sister I thought I had lost for good came back to us in full throttle, because little Amelia had given Jackie a purpose, a reason to get up in the mornings. It was uncanny that Amelia possessed so many of Lily's quirky qualities. It was hard not to see her as a gift from God himself, which I invariably believe she was. She seemed to fit in the Peterson family so seamlessly, as if she all but belonged, and I soon forgot that she wasn't even my sister's biological daughter. She soon began to call Jackie Mummy and Bernie Dad. When my sister took that casual stroll in the woods with her bulldogs, the day after she had visited that psychic medium, that was when she claimed she had encountered a Bigfoot, albeit ever so briefly. In fact, the bizarre encounter appeared to be so fleeting, rather like a butterfly brushing past you, nudging you on the cheek for a second, and you begin to wonder if it was a trick of the light. It's easy to second-guess yourself and to doubt what you've seen. But I know when people encounter a Bigfoot, their reaction is very much the same. I'm not sure if I saw what I thought I saw, they'll lightly say. Maybe I was imagining it. And then in the next breath they will say, but I'm sure I saw it. And then they'll go on to give me details about the creature that they couldn't possibly make up. So I knew that they had obviously seen it. And much was the same for my sister. I think Jackie is the most down-to-earth person you could possibly know. So she'd never have dreamed up something like a Bigfoot. Her mind has never entertained the possibility of the cryptid creature's existence. And I'm quite certain on the day she took that casual stroll in the woods, a Bigfoot is the last thing she'd expected to encounter, which made her story all the more plausible to me. I was not surprised, of course, that my sister Jackie didn't want her husband Bernie to know what she'd seen in the woods that day, as Bernie, like any doubting Thomas, would believe anyone who believed in the possibility of the cryptid creature existing in North America was likely as mad as a March hare, which does explain why so many people out there are exceedingly reluctant to come forward and publicly announce any bizarre encounter they might have had with the creature, for fear of ridicule, and who can blame them for that? I remember growing up in our household that my sister Jackie and my father relentlessly patronized me for being passionate about all things pertaining to Bigfoot. My extreme faith in the existence of such a creature made my father very concerned about my psychological well-being. He couldn't believe any respecting son of his could possibly entertain the preposterous idea of Bigfoots existing in North America. He warned me very carefully not to talk to other people about the secret passion I was nursing,
lest they should make fun of me, or think I was a simpleton, or a half-witted ignoramus. I remember him saying to me very precisely, "Son, these people who claim to have seen a Bigfoot are just big storytellers. They're making up things as they go along, all for attention. And you've fallen for it hook, line, and sinker, because you tend to be very gullible. You're swallowing up all their fictitious claims. I promise you, if these things were real, we would have evidence to affirm their existence. But any evidence that they claim to have is so vaguely obscure. And you know why? It's because none of those claims are remotely true. It's all pie in the sky. In other words, it's completely bogus." "So is that it, Dad? You really think in so much uncharted territory all around North America that hasn't even been explored by man, that these unusual creatures don't exist, like Bigfoot? Is that what you're saying? You think it's an impossibility? Son, I can assure you that the only place that Bigfoot exists is in your very active imagination. If you want my salient advice, you'll keep this passion of yours cloak and dagger. Don't tell anybody about it. I don't want you to be ridiculed." I knew my father, of course, had a point, so I never openly acknowledged my feelings about the matter, apart from the people I connected with online. And it was through these acquaintances that I arranged to go on many intrepid adventures, all around North America, with people who had the same passion as I did about the cryptid creature. I would go to places where Bigfoots had been sighted, but when I went exploring these areas, they were well off the beaten track at times, usually in wilderness destinations. But after much searching, I would leave empty-handed and bitterly disappointed, for despite all our greatest attempts, we never came across any Bigfoots, and sometimes I wonder if that was on purpose, almost as if the Bigfoots knew that we were searching for them, and for that very reason they remained all the more elusive. And that, in my mind, is a very definite possibility. But I must admit, when I returned home, I would doubt myself, and I would wonder if my father was right after all, and that perhaps I was extremely naive, and the stories that people had told me about their Bigfoot encounters were not credible after all. But there was another part of me, an inner knowing, if you like, that didn't doubt for a second that Bigfoot was real. When my sister Jackie told me about her run-in with Bigfoot in the woods, part of me was aggrieved, rather jealous, I will admit, but then there was another part of me that was extremely excited, as if a light had been triggered within me. I guess I just thought, after all my intrepid adventures on the hunt for Bigfoot over the years, that had led to absolutely no sightings and no signs of Bigfoot activity in the area, it was hardly fair that my sister takes a random stroll in the woodgrove on her property, which finally leads to a Bigfoot encounter, and yet the Bigfoot spoke to her, telling her all would be well, in some kind of telepathic exchange, which my sister wondered if she had imagined. How can you imagine something like that? It struck me that the Bigfoot had to be extremely intelligent and very discerning, because it knew the tribulations my sister was clearly going through at the time, and all about her daughter's untimely demise. So they have to be emotionally intelligent creatures. And yet, believe it or not, there are people out there who want to hunt for these creatures, to kill them, to have them as a trophy in some way. And if a creature is emotionally intelligent and imposes no threat, killing it, in my opinion, is tantamount to murder. My sister emphatically believed the memorial stones left around the swimming pool were left there by the Bigfoot himself to honor Lily's tragic passing, which had left our family so completely devastated. When the psychic told my sister that Lily's death had been preordained, I was not cynical about such a revelation. I've always believed that we are here on this earth to grow spiritually. And let's just say, without experiencing pain and loss, we would fail to become more empathetic as people. It is through suffering, grief, and pain we experience humility, compassion, and everything else besides.
I've known people who've gone through life without experiencing any hiccups along the way, and those are the people that appear to be spiritually shallow and devoid of any real depth. Some people like that end up occupying our prisons. For them, pulling the trigger and taking someone's life is no big deal, simply because they do not understand human compassion and what it means to care for someone. It would make sense to me for a little girl to come to this earth for 3 years, so that her parents might grow from the horror of losing her. I've never told this to my sister Jackie before, but after Lily died and Amelia came into her life, she changed exponentially in so many positive ways. She has become more of a compassionate person these days. I think the pain she has been through has helped her to blossom as a person. Not that she would admit to that, of course. It's rather like ruthlessly cutting roses back in the autumn, so that when the spring comes, the roses come back in full bloom, and it really has been like that for my sister. I was naturally very enchanted by my sister's story, which I didn't doubt for a second. For a start, Jackie has always been sceptical about the existence of Bigfoot, and she's never been inclined to make up stories, apart from fairy tales. So I believe she saw what she thinks she saw. I decided on this visit, while I stayed at Jackie's beautiful avant-garde property in the Georgian countryside, that boasted every modern convenience known to man, that I was going to make the most of my week's stay here, in search for the Bigfoot that my sister had seen. If, of course, she had seen one. Maybe there were others in the area, and possibly even in her woodgrove. I mean, maybe they get attached to certain places, and the woodgrove on my sister's property would be a very good place for a Bigfoot to live. There are streams running through the woods there containing water and fish, plenty of berries in summer, and then, of course, there is an abundance of indigenous wildlife that can easily be hunted. In truth, I found that my enthusiasm for the cryptid creature was galvanized, as if the passion from my youth had been reinvigorated. It had been a long time since I'd thought about Bigfoots. My life had moved on, and other interests along the way had stolen my attention. Unlike my sister, I wasn't married yet, and I had a rather humdrum job in Portland, working for a security firm. And let's just say, if I had talked about Bigfoot among many of those colleagues of mine, I'm quite sure such conversations would not have gone down favourably. Not that I'm saying everybody was a cynic. I couldn't help but feel that now that I was staying at Jackie's house, this was the quintessential opportunity for me to take the bull by the horns and go and search for this Bigfoot that she had encountered. I knew I couldn't get my hopes up. As often they have been brutally dashed. However, this time, instead of going off to search for Bigfoot with a few other passionate Bigfoot enthusiasts at my side, I would be making this journey all alone. And maybe, I thought, it possibly could increase my chances of an encounter. I had informed Jackie when her husband Bernie was out of earshot that I would be going for a walk very early in the morning in the woods. She had told me not to get my hopes up. "I told you, I'm not sure if I saw a Bigfoot," she kept saying to me. "It happened so quickly, Bernie." "Don't worry, sis," I assured her. "I've been disappointed so many times. I am prepared to be disappointed again." I had asked Amelia about the bear man she sometimes saw in the woods, but I didn't get much out of her. She told me he was very nice, and that was about it. I had set my alarm clock for 4:30 the following morning, so when my clock sounded its alarm, I jolted out of my sleep. I had gone to bed in all my clothes, so I could get out of the house as quickly as possible, with minimum fuss. I knew that Jackie had an alarm system in our house that had recently been installed, shortly after Amelia had been adopted. You see, when someone has lost a child, they become hyper-vigilant, you could say, because they are terrified of losing another child. My sister had made sure that her swimming pool was out of bounds, so that never again could a child of hers die on the property. Let's just say my sister never kept her eyes off her newly adopted child. Luckily, Jackie had shown me how to switch off the alarm system when I exited the property, for the last thing I wanted to do was to wake Bernie up and be subjected to all his questions as to why the hell I was getting up at such a godless time in the morning. The last thing I wanted to do was to explain myself to a very cynical man. Some secrets, in my opinion, are best not shared. It rather reminded me of the olden days getting up like this, going on my early morning or nightly quests in search of the elusive creature, for I was doing it all over again, and I felt like a child embarking on an exciting adventure. There was a pronounced nip in the air, so I made sure I dressed warmly, and then I grabbed the torch that Jackie had given me the previous night. The door of the guest room swung open very quietly as I gingerly tiptoed across the landing, past Amelia's bedroom, and past Jackie and Bernie's bedroom. All their doors appeared to be halfway open, and I did my level best not to make a single sound. Luckily, Jackie's house, being a new build, didn't creak in the way that old houses tend to do, but I very nearly set the alarm off when I almost forgot to disengage it. The bulldogs were contentedly sleeping in the kitchen in their baskets. I was absolutely certain when I slipped past the kitchen, all hell would break loose, and their barking would give me away. I could imagine Bernie coming running down the staircase, waving a wrought iron fire poker in his hands, staring at me through the darkness, thinking I might possibly be a dangerous intruder. I'm very glad to say the Petersons' bulldogs did not bark, so my escape from the house was pretty seamless, without too many challenges. I glanced down briefly at my watch. It was 5:15. It was dark, with not a sliver of light outdoors, apart from the soft illumination from the moon, that was bashfully hiding her face behind some cloud cover. I was grateful that Jackie had given me a very good torch, with great visibility, as it really did feel more like 2 o'clock in the morning than close to 5. There was a cool breeze blowing against my cheeks as I hesitantly made my way through the woodgrove, where Jackie had experienced her bizarre encounter. Would I be so fortunate, I wondered? I wasn't so sure. I felt a prickle of excitement tickle my chest teasingly, as if I was filled with a colony of monarch butterflies flapping around inside of me. I knew this feeling well enough. I'd experienced it on numerous Bigfoot hunts before, that had all amounted to absolutely nothing. It got significantly much darker for me when I stepped into the forest, but that was to be expected, of course, although thankfully with so much tree fall, as the trees were shedding their autumn leaves, occasionally a trickle of light from the reticent moon appeared to wash through the woods, so it made visibility even better. I made my way rather gingerly down the curvaceous woodland trails that twisted and turned in every direction. I was listening for any strange sounds that might get my attention, but all was inauspiciously, very unnaturally quiet, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I didn't like the fact that everything had grown so solemn, so austere, so silent, almost as if a predator was lurking around. Suddenly I was gripped with a feeling of great trepidation, and that was when the whispering began. Can you see me? He's over there, he's over there, he's over there, he's over there. It was so haunting. I felt chills running down the back of my spine. It felt as if a group of people were whispering about me, but it was a horrible, unsettling feeling. The woodgrove had become menacing, as if it had become a godless, iniquitous place. I had been in the woods before with my sister, when she first built her dream home here, and they had never felt so unwelcome as they did now. Of course, I told myself I was being ridiculous. There was nothing to be fearful of, as the Bigfoot encounter my sister had enjoyed was completely benign, very benevolent. So why should it be any different for me, were I to encounter the creature? But something did not feel right about the woodgrove that morning. I'm the kind of person who intuitively always listens to my gut. I've always been that way inclined. But on this occasion, I paid it no regard, as such was my resolute determination to encounter a Bigfoot. I scrambled through the grove of trees, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that my life was in mortal danger. That was when I heard the whispering, getting louder and louder and louder. Go after him, get him, we'll get him,
Get him! And then I could hear the shuffling of feet, the moving around of foliage. I'd hear the thumping sound of something that I couldn't be sure what it was, and I would hear twigs being crunched, and I knew instinctively I was being followed. So I turned around and flooded the wood grove with my torchlight, but I saw nothing. Go back to the house, a voice inside me kept urging me. It's not safe here. But I stubbornly refused to listen to my instincts. Then the figures appeared before me. There were 3 of them, lofty figures. They were humanoid individuals, but they were not Bigfoots. What the hell were they, I wondered? I remember standing still as a statue, staring at these things in such bewilderment. And now I was absolutely sure, without any reasonable doubt, that I was experiencing a lucid nightmare, because what I was seeing could not possibly be real. It couldn't be. The creatures continued to whisper in front of me, as their eyes, dark as the night, were fixed on me. And I knew they were talking about me. Everything about them was soullessly insidious. I shone my torches on them, and I could see they were covered in beige-looking skin that was lacking so much colour. They were tall and lanky, with long spindly legs, and arms with hands that possessed razor-sharp talons that were as long as fingers, and were capable of doing a great deal of damage. They could probably slice through anything, like a knife. They had sunken eyes that were black and lifeless. Their heads were larger than their bodies. Suddenly they began lunging towards me. They were like 3 grasshoppers, as there was something insect-like about them, and yet human in their gait. I remember letting out a shrill, ear-piercing scream, because I knew that these things were about to kill me. I began to run as fast as I possibly could, but the things began to give me chase. All the while they whispered among each other. My life flashed before my very eyes, and I remember a profound sense of sadness washing over me, as I thought I would not be around to see Amelia getting married one day, and for some reason that was very upsetting. And I also wanted to see if my sister had any more children, because on this morning, while the Peterson household lay fast asleep in their beds, I was facing a battle between life and death. And I remember when I screamed out like I did, I thought the sound had come from one of these horrendous-looking creatures that appeared to be pursuing me. But I realized later the sound was coming from me. All of a sudden the woodgrove began to boom and thump, and I could hear feet, heavy feet, pounding through the woods. The creatures that were pursuing me stood still for a moment. They began whispering among each other. I think he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. I know this because I very unfortunately tripped over a burgeoning root that I failed to see, and I struggled to get up. So I hurriedly looked behind me to see how close these creatures were getting to me. I was gasping for breath, my heart thundering violently in my chest. The humanoid figures had become strangely reticent, as if they had become somewhat reluctant to follow me. The booming sound in the woods increased, and this booming appeared to unsettle them for some reason. And then there he was, a gargantuan-sized male Bigfoot, possibly over 9 foot tall. He thundered towards these humanoid creatures and let out a formidable roar that was quite terrifying. He began to vigorously pound his ponderous chest with his fists, which was an extremely intimidating gesture. The creatures let out a shrill scream, and then they fled from the Bigfoot. If I'd ever envisaged encountering a Bigfoot, it had certainly not been on these terms. Over the years I'd learnt that people had always been taken aback by the size of a Bigfoot, but nothing prepared me for the size of this creature that I was seeing now. The morning had broken, and I still was clutching my torch. So when I looked up at the Bigfoot,
I'm quite sure my jaw had dropped to the ground, and my eyes were probably standing on stalks. The Bigfoot was lofty, but broad at the same time. Every part of his body rippled with muscle definition. He was built like the Incredible Hulk, covered in long flowing dark hair, with significantly sized big biceps. But it was his expressive face that held my interest hostage, as everything about the Bigfoot's face was so human. Granted, he had a protruding forehead, deep-set hooded eyes, high cheekbones and a flat nose. But in his awesome presence, I was completely humbled, as he was so majestic in every sense of the word, and he carried on his being an ancient wisdom that was so palpable I could tangibly feel it. I knew in that quintessential moment that had the Bigfoot not scared those humanoid figures away, I would probably have become like one of those missing 411 cases you hear about. I don't doubt that for a second. For a moment me and the Bigfoot were locked in a gaze, and then he spoke to me in a strange language, and I heard the words in my head. Hankila sikwa, ha minatila, konsansika. You shouldn't come into the woods when the light recedes. That's when those fleshy things are around, and it's not safe for anyone. You can come in here when the light is out, because they don't hang around in the daylight hours. But at night, it's not safe. You saved my life, I said. The Bigfoot didn't say anything in response, but just nodded in agreement, and he guided me very carefully through the wood grove, and his presence made me feel incredibly safe. I had heard somewhere that Bigfoot stink, but let me assure you, in my experience that was not true. This majestic creature smelt of the woodland forest itself. Once we got to the edge of the forest, the Bigfoot said to me, I know you've wanted to see one of my kind for a very long time, and we've never obliged that request until now, because I had to come to your rescue. Just so you know, the lady of the house was very sad when her daughter went away. But her daughter had to go away. She was never meant to stay. But this new one will be here with her, and will not go away. And I always keep watch over her. Tell the lady of the house that, and tell her not to live in fear. And with that, he glided away. When I got back to the house, I managed to wake Jackie up. She was very sleepy, and reluctantly climbed out of bed. Luckily, I succeeded in not waking Bernie up. Her hair was flat on one side, and her eyes looked a little sleepy, but I didn't care about waking her up so early. Some things could not wait. I had to tell Jackie what had happened to me. I could see she had become quite curious, as she quickly grabbed her dressing gown that was hanging on the hook at the back of the door. She eagerly slipped her feet into her slippers and said to me, Come, let's go and make some coffee, and you can tell me all about it. I watched my sister bustling around in the kitchen, preparing coffee for us. It was exactly what I needed. I was sitting on one of those high chairs against the granite counter, and my sister slipped in one opposite me. So I take it you were in the woodgrove this morning. Did you see the Bigfoot? Judging by your demeanour, I rather suspect you did, although you do seem a little bit on edge, as if something is upsetting you a little, perhaps. I saw more than just a Bigfoot. That's why I'm so flustered like this. What the hell did you see, Bernie? My sister asked me, her eyes beginning to widen. I proceeded to tell Jackie at great length about the strange flesh-coloured humanoid creatures that I had encountered that had chased me through the woods. I thought they were going to kill me, I told her. My sister was genuinely shocked by what had happened to me in the woodgrove that morning, but she believed me, and believed that my story was true. Later, from much research we did together, we discovered that many Navy SEALs had had such encounters, and some of them had been killed by these creatures. Only their families had been informed that they were killed in a tragic accident. So there are definitely people out there that know about these creatures, but few appear to be willing to talk about them.
But as to what they are, your guess is as good as mine.
Should I be worried about the woodgrove on my property?
My sister asked me, looking unduly alarmed. The Bigfoot said that you shouldn't go into the woodgrove when it's dark. I told her. He said during the day it's safe. I got the impression these things don't like the light very much.
What the hell are they?
My sister asked me. I've no idea. I went on to tell her how the Bigfoot had saved my life, and how he had told me that Lily was never meant to be on this earth for very long, which was what the psychic medium had told her, and I think that brought her a great measure of peace. In the years that followed, my sister went on to have another boy and a girl, and although she misses Lily terribly, she's moved on with her life, and determined to live it to the fullest, for life is very short. As for me, I'm glad to be around to see it all, as I know without the Bigfoot's intervention, I doubt I'd still be here. So there you are. That's my story.
Well, hello there. I hope you enjoyed the Omnibus edition. We've got many more coming our way for you to listen to. Sending you love wherever you are in the world, in North America, Canada, Kenya, wherever you may be. I send you lots and lots of love. Thank you for listening to my Omnibus, and I really do hope you enjoyed it, because that's the whole idea about it, is to give you some interesting stories to listen to. So until next time, goodbye and good night.